Chapter 208. The 7 super divine weapons paused in midair. Then, 7 shadow puppets appeared at the same time, turning into 7 streaks of light. They charged at the 9 figures of the priestess from different directions. A cold light flashed in the eyes of the snow goddess priestess, and the 9 figures merged into one. The golden light in her right hand suddenly shone brightly, and a dark blue spear appeared in her hand. The spear instantly grew to 20 feet long. Just as the 7 shadow puppets were closing in on her, the spear was immersed in gold by the light of the Huangji acupoint. Then, her wrist shook slightly and the spear silently shot out. The golden spear's ice aura was completely restrained, but Nian Bing had a strange feeling in his heart. The space around the golden spear was twisting, and his 7 shadow puppets were facing it. No matter which direction they moved, they would be hit. What was going on? Nian Bing was shocked. At the same time, he had a new understanding of the Huangji acupoint. He wanted to control his shadow puppets to disperse, but at this moment, he realized that no matter how he controlled his shadow puppets, they seemed to be locked onto by the attractive golden spear. That domineering spear seemed to want to destroy all 7 shadow puppets at the same time, and its final destination was his heart. Nian Bing naturally wouldn't resign himself to death. He expanded his psychic power, and the 7 shadow puppets stopped abruptly. The 7 divine weapons were raised high at the same time, and the 7 colored light condensed into one in the air. With ice as the body, fire as the blade, and the other 5 elements as the soul, it suddenly slashed forward. Nian Bing smiled faintly and put his hands together in front of him. His eyes flashed. His psychic power was completely focused, and he controlled his 7 elements to absorb the innate energy in the air as much as possible. The speed of the golden spear didn't seem to be fast, but when the 7 shadow puppets were halfway through their slashes, the golden spear had already hit the middle of the 7-colored slash, which was the weakest point of all energy. The sound of glass shattering rang out in Nian Bing's mind. The 7 shadow puppets fell in all directions at the same time, and the golden spear was reduced to half its original size, but it still flew towards Nian Bing. Nian Bing's face changed. He hadn't expected the power of the extreme Huangqi to be so overbearing. But he could guess that the extreme Huangqi of the ice goddess was not as simple as it seemed. At the very least, compared to the last time they met, his aura was clearly much stronger. Faced with the perfect combination of ice and overlord qi from the Huangji acupoint, Nian Bing was shocked but did not panic. He subconsciously took a step back. He did not use any magic to defend himself, nor did he launch any attack. Instead, he opened his arms and welcomed the attack with his chest. The ice goddess priestess was stunned, and a trace of regret flashed in her eyes. However, this imperial ice god spear was indeed launched with all her strength. With her spiritual power, there was no way she could withdraw it. She did not understand why Nian Bing did this. Did he not want to save his parents? Could it be that he wanted to commit suicide? No, this is impossible. No matter how she guessed, she could not understand Nian Bing's current actions. Nian Bing used facts to give the ice goddess priestess an answer. When the imperial ice god spear arrived in front of him and hit his chest, his body slightly moved, causing the imperial ice god spear to hit the Lizhong acupoint. In an instant, Nian Bing clearly felt an overlord qi that seemed to be able to tear everything to shreds. The feeling of the extreme Huangqi was clearly imprinted in his mind. The ice goddess priestess saw a strange scene. The moment Nian Bing's imperial ice god spear hit him, it actually turned into specks of golden light and drifted away. Naturally, it did not shatter on its own. Instead, it was turned into fine powder by a mixture of black and white that was spurted out from Nian Bing's chest. The ice goddess priestess clearly felt that the huge flow of air was so terrifying. It was 2 completely opposite auras. Although it was just a flash, under the influence of the aura, her chest felt stuffy. An indescribable pain spread throughout her body. She could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Only then did she feel much better. Just like when Nian Bing faced the Imperial Ice God spear, her heart was also filled with shock. What kind of power was that space? Nian Bing's situation was not much better than the Ice Goddess priestess. His face turned pale and he also spat out a mouthful of blood. His body staggered back a few steps before he could stabilize himself. Although Nian Bing's body was very strong, it was still impossible for him to withstand the attack of the Imperial Ice God spear. The reason why he was safe and sound was because of his Lizhong acupoint. Before leaving the continent of gods, Cao told him that although he couldn't use the Lizhong acupoint, which had reached the ultimate level in an instant, because of the gathering of the Death Orb, there was not only the Death Orb, but also the Life Orb. These two types of energy were the purest and most powerful energy in the world. Although Nian Bing couldn't use them, his Lizhong acupoint had already become the most solid point. Cao and Tianxiang both said that even if they only attacked that point, they wouldn't be able to hurt Nian Bing. Therefore, when he saw that the Ice Goddess Priestess's Imperial Ice God Spear was a point attack, Nian Bing boldly chose to face it this way. It was also because of the two powerful auras of life and death that he was able to turn the situation from a disadvantageous position into a balanced one. The reason why Nian Bing was injured wasn't because his Lizhong acupoint was broken, but because the energy produced by the Imperial Ice God Spear after its eruption had a certain shock effect on his body. This was something he didn't expect, so he was injured. The 7 shadow puppets returned to Nian Bing's side, but their corporeal energy bodies had become somewhat illusory. The might of the 7 divine blades couldn't be fully displayed. In front of the domineering Imperial Ice God Spear, their own energy had been greatly damaged. With the help of the spiritual power emitted by Nian Bing's Tian Yen acupoint, the 7 shadow puppets continuously absorbed the Xiantian Qi in the air to replenish themselves. Nian Bing looked at the Ice Goddess Priestess, as expected of the number 1 magician who had dominated the continent for many years. "You really hid yourself deeply," the Ice Goddess Priestess said. "Aren't you the same? You have many more secrets than I do." Nian Bing touched his chest. "Secrets are relative. Lord Priestess, let's continue." The 7 shadow puppets disappeared. They all had their own souls. Nian Bing didn't want to see them suffer fatal injuries. Not only did it represent his divine blades, but it also represented Emperor Kurobutsu and the 6 dwarven masters. The 7 divine blades floated around Nian Bing. The sigh of the Ice Goddess and the roar of the Ice God entered his hands, and his wrist slightly shook. The 2 divine blades had already drawn a huge triangle. The surging ice and fire harmoniously condensed in the middle, forming a magic array of the same origin of ice and fire. It had been a long time since he used what he was best at. However, facing the Ice Goddess Priestess' tyrannical Huangji acupoint, Nian Bing didn't dare to hold back, so he used his full strength. Nian Bing's ice magic was naturally not as powerful as that of the Ice Goddess Priestess, but he still had fire magic. 2 figures gradually appeared behind him. The figure of 3 feet tall had appeared once in the Feng people. It was a graceful figure wearing a blue dress, and a roaring fire god wearing a fiery red armor. They appeared behind him, and Nian Bing's 2 blades disappeared at the same time. The 6-pointed star that he had drawn earlier also emanated an ambiguous aura that spread to 100 feet around Feng He. 2 different auras of ice and fire continuously revolved around his body. One was blue and the other was red. 2 light ribbons descended from the sky and landed on the 2 figures. Their illusory bodies constantly became clearer. The Ice Goddess Priestess's expression changed. "The Ice Goddess summon, the Fire God summon, your West Meridian acupoint has reached the ultimate level?" Nian Bing shook his head. At this time, he still had the ability to speak. "No, my West Meridian acupoint is the same as yours, at the middle stage. However, there's one thing you probably didn't know. At this time, I don't need to hide it from you. I have the Tian Yen acupoint, although my West Meridian acupoint has only reached the middle stage, but with the spiritual force in the Tian Yen acupoint to control the energy, I can completely display the ultimate power of the West Meridian acupoint. Come, take my most powerful attack of the same origin of ice and fire. Although the power of the 7 forbidden and 7 deadly curses was powerful, the amount of magical power and spiritual force it required was also abnormally large. Relying on the connection of 7 different types of magic to form a chain-like triggering effect, it could display an attack more powerful than the combined power of the 7 types of magic. However, the 7 forbidden and 7 deadly curses also had its own problems, and that was the time it took to condense the energy was too long. Moreover, it couldn't make their energy reach the peak, and could only maintain the power of an 11th level forbidden spell. However, Nian Bing's summon of ice and fire gods was different. As a magician of the same origin of ice and fire were the 2 types of magic that he was most proficient in. As the shadows gradually became solid, the power of these 2 11th level forbidden spells had entered the 12th level God's Descent spell. When Nian Bing's summon of ice and fire could only release 4th level or 5th level spells, the combination of ice and fire could already increase the power of the attack by more than twofold. And when the 2 God's Descent spells of ice and fire were combined, the power could only be described as terrifying. Although Nian Bing's body was already injured, he still chose to use this method of attack without any hesitation. It wasn't because he was crazy, but because he had absolute confidence. Although the Tian Yen acupoint promoted the ability of a physical spiritual force attack, Nian Bing could completely rely on the immense amount of spiritual force he consumed to control these 2 God's Descent spells. His own magical power was released to a large extent. In addition to the Tian Yen acupoint and the West Meridian acupoint, the energy of the gods of ice and fire was continuously condensing. The ice goddess raised the spear in her hand, while the fire god raised the war blade in his hand. A powerful attack was launched from the corner. If the Emperor acupoint was the greatest advantage of the ice goddess priest, then the summon of ice and fire was Nian Bing's strongest ability. Looking at the ice goddess in front of him that was becoming clearer and clearer, the ice goddess priest couldn't help but feel amused. As a priest of the ice goddess, he had to face the attack of his own faith. However, from the moment Nian Bing started to condense her magical power, she had already started to act. She raised her head and looked at the blue sky. All the icy mist had dissipated, and layers of dark blue ice crystals had condensed on the surface of her body. She slowly pointed her right hand at the sky, and golden light covered her body. Under the cover of the ice crystals, her physical body was quickly pushed forward, and she became a body wrapped in dark blue ice. As the ice continued to increase, her body also gradually expanded, and the right hand she raised continued to emit layers of golden light, dyeing the dark blue ice crystals golden. Nian Bing's expression changed slightly. He could see that the ice goddess priest was also using the ice goddess summon, but her summon was much stronger than his own. Under the ice goddess priest's summon, what appeared in front of him was a ice goddess wearing blue armor, a ice goddess wearing golden armor. In addition to the cold aura of her golden body, there was also a holy and majestic aura. A huge aura constantly spread to the surroundings, and when her body expanded to 3 zhang, Nian Bing's condensed magical power reached its peak. Without any hesitation, Nian Bing's eyebrows completely turned golden. Under the circumstances where he didn't have the confidence to defeat the ice goddess priest, he used all his strength to open his strange dual acupoint. Something unexpected happened. When the golden ice goddess condensed by the ice goddess priest produced a powerful pressure from the golden light between Nian Bing's eyebrows, her originally majestic body actually swayed a little, and the golden light on her body also weakened a little. Nian Bing's eyes lit up, and he knew his chance had come. Behind him, the 2 huge figures that had already become solid floated out with red and blue afterimages, rushing out at a speed that was hard to see with the naked eye. The fire god's war blade and the ice goddess spear made contact in the air, and the red and blue light instantly spread to every corner of the surroundings. 2 huge blade shadows appeared behind them, precisely the sigh of the ice goddess, the morning dew blade, and the roar of the fire god, the righteous Yang blade. Nian Bing's most powerful ice and fire magic, the god's descent spell, which was formed by the fusion of ice and fire, erupted. The sky changed, and the blue sky suddenly pushed its luster. Everything in the surroundings seemed to disappear in an instant, and Nian Bing and the ice goddess priest both arrived in another domain. Everything in the surroundings turned into a hell of ice and fire. The dual god's summon of ice and fire actually erupted with a power that surpassed even that of the 7 forbidden 7 seals curse. The golden ice goddess immediately reacted after being slightly dazed. Her body and her spear fused into one, and a huge golden light formed a sharp cone that rushed straight towards that hell of ice and fire. The power of the Huangji acupoint was raised to the limit, and the ice goddess priest revealed her true strength. The 4 major acupoints released all their energy at the same time. After the Li Zhong acupoint condensed, the energy that had been cultivated for many years completely erupted in an instant. The Xiantian Qi absorbed by the West Meridian acupoint and the defensive energy released by the Fangjia acupoint completely fused into the golden ice goddess. When both sides knew that techniques could no longer determine victory, they both chose the most primitive method of attack. Energy collided. Through the Tian Yen acupoint, Nian Bing could see every change in the energy of the two sides from the moment of attack to the moment of contact. Gold, red, and blue light instantly merged together, and the sky changed color, and the earth trembled. That was the power of the end. Destruction, they brought destruction. Nian Bing didn't expect that their strongest attack would bring about such a terrifying effect. The 3 types of light caused the surroundings to lose all light. Whether it was Nian Bing or the snow goddess priestess, they all felt that their 6 senses had completely disappeared in an instant. Even Nian Bing's Tian Yen acupoint could only maintain a portion of his clarity. There was no huge explosion as they had imagined. It was as if everything around them had disappeared. After an unknown amount of time, Nian Bing's 6 senses gradually returned to him. Of course, he remembered that he had promised Lan Chun that he wouldn't kill his master. But at that moment, he already had no other choice. He couldn't attack with all his strength. That was death. The ice goddess priest, who had hidden most of her strength, had already surpassed the ordinary god-ranked experts of the godly continent. Everything gradually returned to normal. What Nian Bing saw was a scene that he would never forget. The ice god tower had disappeared, and all he could see was the soil and rocks in the distance. The ground was as smooth as a mirror, as if it had formed a layer of crystal, flickering with a faint blue and a faint red. Looking up at the sky, he felt as if he had entered a basin, surrounded by towering mountains. But why were these mountains flat? The mountain walls, which were hundreds of meters high, were also unusually smooth. Even the structure was similar to the ground. The air was filled with scorching fire elemental energy and violent ice elemental energy. The 2 elements caused the entire basin to be covered in a layer of faint red and blue mist. Nian Bing slowly stood up from the ground. He found that his clothes weren't damaged, and there wasn't even a trace of dust. His surroundings were abnormally quiet. How did I come here? This was the question Nian Bing wanted to ask the most. But, in this wide ground, which was tens of square kilometers wide, no one could answer this question of his. Nian Bing found that this valley was long and narrow, extending horizontally to both sides. At a glance, there seemed to be no end in sight. Coughing, Nian Bing felt a burst of tightness in his chest. Fortunately, the life energy contained in the life orb nourished his body, making him feel a little better. He subconsciously raised his hand to touch his face. He felt blood on his hand. When he condensed an ice mirror to reflect on himself, he couldn't help but be shocked. Was the person bleeding from all 7 orifices him? I didn't die, then what was the result of the battle? Just as he kept looking around, thinking about where he was, 200 meters away, a graceful figure staggered to stand up. Her movements were somewhat sluggish. Her long blue hair was disheveled. It was the Ice Goddess Priestess. The Ice Goddess Priestess didn't bleed from all 7 orifices like Nianbing, but her pretty face had become as white as a sheet of paper. Just as she stood up, the first thing she said was, "I didn't die? Why am I not dead?" Nianbing looked at this woman who he had always regarded as his strongest opponent in amusement. "Do you really want to die? Then why don't you kill yourself?" Only then did the Ice Goddess Priestess see Nianbing. "Do you think that dying is an easy thing? When you have too many responsibilities, it's not that easy to die. Where are we?" Nianbing shook his head and said, "This is also what I wanted to ask you." The Ice Goddess Priestess' consciousness gradually sobered up. Feeling the violent magic elements in the air, she looked at this huge basin that was nearly 1,000 meters wide, with no end in sight. She couldn't help but ask blankly, "How do I know where this is?" Her body swayed, and with a cry, she spat out a mouthful of blood. Nianbing was just about to laugh at his opponent when he felt a pain in his meridians. He couldn't help but spit out blood as well. Both of them swayed at the same time and fell to the ground at the same time. They both knew that the battle wasn't over yet. No matter where they were, today there must be a victor between them. Looking at each other, they each relied on their own abilities to madly absorb the violent magic elements in the air. Nianbing discovered through his inner vision that more than 70% of the magic power in his body had been consumed. Although that most powerful ice and fire magic had absorbed a large amount of natural energy, it had also consumed a large part of his energy. But he was glad that the 2 divine blades of ice and fire had already returned to his body and hadn't been lost. Only the light seemed to have dimmed a lot. Obviously, the energy consumption was too great. They also didn't know how great the destructive power of their attack was. They didn't even know what level of attack power they had after releasing the energy explosion. After the time it took to eat a meal, the Ice Goddess was the first to stand up from the ground. Nianbing saw the golden light flickering on her right hand. Nianbing also stood up, not showing any weakness as she released a faint 7-colored halo. "I have a proposal. Why don't we go up first and see where this is before we fight?" Nianbing said. The Ice Goddess Priestess snorted disdainfully. "Can you still fly?" Nianbing snorted coldly. "Don't underestimate your opponent." Touching the ground with both feet, she jumped high. Gray light spots condensed under her body. A loud dragon's roar echoed in the valley. The little dragon king finally appeared. It wasn't that Nianbing didn't want him to help himself. In the previous battle, the little dragon king had asked for help several times, but Nianbing had refused. Oscar was the only child of the Light Dragon King and the Dark Dragon King. At the same time, he was also Nianbing's friend. He didn't want his friend to be hurt because of his own matters. The strength of the Ice Goddess Priestess was far beyond his expectations. Therefore, he would rather face it himself than let Oscar get involved and suffer any harm. The Priestess of the Snow Goddess stared at the 70-foot-long gray dragon in astonishment. Her expression changed slightly, but it returned to normal in an instant. A faint trace of sadness flashed through her beautiful eyes. A blizzard appeared beneath her feet, and she chased after Nianbing. She floated up into the air and flew towards the valley that was thousands of feet high. Nianbing and the Ice Goddess Priestess maintained a certain distance. When they reached the top, they were stunned, because they finally found where they were. In front of the Ice God Tower, the place where Nianbing and the Ice Goddess Priestess fought before was a wide plain. Only a few cold-resistant plants could grow there. The flat plain was very suitable for carriages to move forward, and right in the middle of the plain it had changed beyond recognition. A deep ditch spanned across the plain. This was the valley they were in before. Nianbing stared blankly at the hundreds of anxious ice mages beside the ditch, then looked at the still towering Ice God Tower not far away. He knew that all of this was real. His gaze fell on the Ice Goddess Priestess. All of this was done by us? The ice goddess priestess's shock was no less than Yen Bing's. Such a huge destructive power extended all the way to the huge ditch in the distance. It gave her a deep shock. She had some lingering fear. If the explosion of the two hadn't been horizontal, but vertical or circular, the ice god tower might not have existed. The hundreds of ice mages looked at Yen Bing and the ice goddess priestess flying in the air, their eyes revealing intense reverence. After causing such a scene, could they still be called humans? Was this the work of humans? The ice goddess priestess sternly shouted, "Did you forget my words? Without my orders, who let you leave? Go back." Lord Priestess. All the ice mages knelt down. Bing Qing, who was kneeling at the front, said with tears streaming down her face, "Let us face the danger of the ice god tower together." The ice goddess priestess's face became abnormally cold. "I repeat, go back. Otherwise, from today onwards, the ice god tower will no longer exist." The ice mages didn't expect the ice goddess priestess to say this. They silently got up and went back. Yen Bing's silence watched the ice goddess priestess do this. She couldn't help but admire her. "Lord Priestess, do you think you still have a chance?" As she spoke, a milky white brilliance rose around Yen Bing's body. It symbolized the milky white brilliance of the Feng Jia acupoint. Although he looked more miserable on the surface, in reality, his injuries were lighter than the ice goddess priestess. During Feng people's cultivation, he opened the Feng Jia acupoint. Because of the Heaven's Eye and the ultimate Emperor realm, he reached the middle stage as soon as he opened it. As an expert who opened 5 acupoints, although he couldn't really use 3 of them, his overall strength was about the same as the ice goddess priestess. The ice goddess priestess turned to Nianbing. Through the previous battle, she naturally felt that the difference in strength between her and Nianbing was very small. Moreover, Nianbing's powerful battle strength left a deep impression on her. If it was just them fighting each other, she firmly believed that with the ultimate Emperor point, she still had a chance. However, looking at the dragon under Nianbing's feet and the gray scales gradually appearing on Nianbing's body, she knew that she had already walked on the path of no return. However, her eyes didn't change in the slightest. She calmly said, "The battle between us will not end until one of us dies. Killing me will be your true victory." Nianbing took a deep breath. Could it be that she would only let go when one side died? "Chenshin told me that you didn't kill my parents. As long as you let them go, there will be no need for us to continue fighting. I don't want to continue 10 years of grudges. It's not too late to let go now." The ice goddess priestess smiled. This was the first time Nianbing had seen her smile, but it was a bit crazy and mournful. "Let go? If I could have let go 20 years ago, then I wouldn't be where I am now." Nianbing said, "Do you really want us to explode our own acupoints to end this battle?" The ice goddess priestess coldly said, "Explode our own acupoints? That's something only a coward would do. As the master of the ice god tower, I will never make that choice. How many years has it been? You are the first person to see my true strength." As she spoke, her body began to change. Layers of red light began to appear on her blue body. If she wasn't sitting on Oscar, Nianbing might have fallen down on the spot. Her eyes revealed an exceptionally shocked expression. "No, this is impossible. How can you be a magician of the same origin as ice and fire?" Nianbing couldn't be more familiar with the red light on the ice goddess priestess body. It symbolized the 2 magic elements of ice and fire. Nianbing wasn't surprised by her sudden increase in strength. Even if she was a dual-element magician, she wouldn't be able to defeat the current her. But how could she be a dual-element magician? "Senior sister, stop." An excited voice came from afar. That heavenly voice not only made Ling Nianbing's body stiffen, but at the same time, the ice goddess priestess also became sluggish. Chapter 209. In the distance, 4 figures were approaching them like lightning. The priestess was trembling all over. She never thought that she would face such a situation. Unlike the priestess, when Yen Bing heard the sound of nature, his body trembled violently. In the next moment, he separated himself from Oscar's body and condensed the last of his energy. Propelled by the wind, he used the fastest speed possible to meet the four figures. 10 years. Although it had been 10 years, that sound was still so familiar, so intimate. Every drop of blood in Yen Bing's body was boiling. He had been waiting for this moment for far too long. When he was a few meters away from the four figures, Yen Bing fell to his knees. Because he was rushing forward too quickly, his body rolled forward 3 meters before stopping. His clothes, which hadn't been damaged in the previous battle with the priestess, were now slightly scratched at his knees. However, Yen Bing didn't have time to think about anything else. His eyes were completely focused on the four people in front of him. The four of them were practically walking side by side. On the far left was Frozen Cloud, who was wearing a blue magic robe. Ever since her royal feather had awakened, she no longer needed to use magic to fly. That pair of huge blue wings allowed her to freely soar in the air. On the far right was the dwarf warrior Halogen, wearing a black armor. A faint black aura surrounded his body. Although his aura was restrained, one could still feel the tyrannical aura within. The two people in the middle were wearing ordinary cloth clothes, but even that couldn't hide their elegance. The person on the left was tall and had long golden hair draped over his broad shoulders. His handsome face was as resolute as a chiseled axe. There was actually a ball of flame burning under his feet, urging his body forward. Yen Bing's face was 70% similar to his, but this person looked more mature. The vicissitudes of time had left some traces on his face. Although he lacked some of Yen Bing's heroic spirit, he was more mature. Beside him was a woman. Her long blue hair reached her waist. She looked to be around 27 or 28 years old. Her blue eyes were filled with excitement. Tears continuously flowed down her face due to her excitement. Her body trembled slightly. "Dad, Mom." These two simple words, along with Yen Bing's choked voice, broke the silence in the air, as if everything had stopped. Lan Chern and Halogen stood to the side and watched as the middle-aged man and woman approached Yen Bing. They were Yen Bing's parents, Rong Tian and Bing Ling. It had been 10 years, a family of 3. They finally met again in front of the Ice God Tower. Everything seemed to have changed, but their kinship had never weakened in the slightest. Before the battle between Yen Bing and the Ice Goddess Priestess, she was afraid that the Ice Goddess Priestess would go back on their word after the battle, so she had Lan Chern and Halogen sneak into the Ice God Tower from another direction. Although the Ice God Tower was very tight, Lan Chern was very familiar with Tanitha's various arrangements. With the help of the Dark Demon Rat, they entered the Ice God Tower through the underground. Under Lan Chen's lead, they found the place where Rong Tian and Bing Ling were sealed. With Halogen and Lan Chen's strength, they forcibly broke the seal from the outside and rescued Yen Bing's parent. They arrived just as Yen Bing and the Ice Goddess Priestess were about to fight to the death. Every step the Bing Ling took forward was very difficult. Looking at Yen Bing, whose face was full of tears, her heart violently trembled. Yen Bing knelt on the ground and used her knees to take a few steps forward. She looked at her mother from inches away. "Mom, I'm Yen Bing. I'm Yen Bing." The Bing Ling could no longer hold back the excitement in her heart. She cried out sorrowfully, "Child." She took him into her arms. The mother and son burst into tears. The emotions that had been accumulated in their hearts for many years suddenly exploded. Their hearts were trembling. A strong sense of familial love engulfed every tiny part of their bodies. Yen Bing finally saw her parents again. Her wish of many years was fulfilled. The sadness in her heart and the emotions that had been suppressed for many years instantly exploded. Rong Tian walked forward. His lips were trembling. He couldn't control his tears. Those were tears of joy. He opened his broad and strong arms and hugged his beloved wife and son. Reunited. The family of 3 was finally reunited. At this moment, the ice goddess priestess had already landed at the edge of the ravine. Looking at the reunion of the Bing Ling family, her eyes constantly flashed with a complicated light. She stood there without moving. The flickering light on her body gradually dimmed. Halogen had been staring at the ice goddess priestess. The god-slaying axe in his hand flashed with black lightning. As long as the ice goddess priestess made a move against Nian Bing's family, he would not hesitate to launch his strongest attack. The ice goddess priestess' gaze fell on Lan Chen. Looking at the blue wings behind her back, she revealed a faint trace of surprise. After a short moment of surprise, her gaze became much gentler. "You release them?" Lan Chen retracted her wings and knelt on the ground with a plop. She lowered her head and said, "Master, it was me. Nian Bing and the others have suffered enough. Master, I'm sorry. I went against your wishes. However, I don't regret it." The ice goddess priestess didn't blame Lan Chen. She sighed softly and said, "You've grown up. Perhaps this was the best ending for him. Get up. I'm not your master." Lan Chen's whole body shook. She cried out involuntarily, "Master, you—" The ice goddess priestess said indifferently, "I'm not saying it out of anger. Jie wasn't your master in the first place. Perhaps this was the best ending for him. Now they also have the ability to protect themselves. They also have such an outstanding son. No matter what happens in the future, I think, their family will be able to face it well. It's over, everything should be over." At this moment, seeing the sudden appearance of Lan Chen's group of 4, the disciples of the Ice God Tower quietly surrounded them from behind in a semicircle. As long as the Ice Goddess Priestess gave the order, they would immediately take action without hesitation. "Child, you've grown up." Bing Ling helped the kneeling Nian Bing up. Looking at his figure that was taller than Rong Tian and his blood-stained face, Bing Ling's eyes were full of affection. His son. His son had already grown up. He has become as handsome as his father, and also possesses such powerful strength. That's enough, that's enough. What else could be more satisfying than that? Nian Bing wiped the tears from his face. Looking at his mother, who did not seem to have changed much because of time, his heart was still trembling. Mum. How many years has it been? How much he wanted to call his mother. Now that his mother was standing in front of him, he felt as if everything was a dream. His mood at this time could no longer be described with the word excited. Yes, our child has grown up. He is already a real man. Rong Tian wiped the tears from his face, looking at his son with a proud expression. Although the previous battle was not over, but the huge gully in front of them had already proved everything. 10 years later, his son came here with the strength of an official to save him and his wife. He has grown up, the trials of the world made him a strong person of the continent. What could make him prouder than having a son like this? Bing Qing, come here. The Ice Goddess Priestess suddenly raised her voice, awakening the family of 3. They could not help but simultaneously look towards the Supreme Master of the Ice God Tower. Bing Qing walked out from the crowd of disciples of the Ice God Tower. Under the influence of the snowstorm, she knelt down in front of the Ice Goddess Priestess at the fastest speed. The Ice Goddess Priestess said indifferently, "I didn't expect the final result to be like this. Everything is different from what I imagined. Bing Qing, give that scroll to me. It seems that I will have to announce the contents of the scroll myself." At this time, the area in front of the Ice God Tower became silent. When Bing Qing handed over the scroll, the Ice Goddess Priestess's hand flashed with a golden light, and the scroll turned into powder and scattered in all directions. He calmly looked at the Bing Ling family with a trace of sadness on his face. "Why did you stop me? Don't tell me that I don't even have the right to choose my own fate? I have already let others live for most of my life. Even my final choice, why do you still want to destroy it?" The Bing Ling looked at the Ice Goddess Priestess. Originally, he was excited to see Nian Bing, but gradually calmed down. He sighed and said bitterly, "Senior sister, why did you do this? A person's life is not only painful, For your own sake, you should live well. Live for yourself, and take care of your body for your own sake. Standing beside the Bingling, Nian Bing could not help but stare blankly. Why did her mother call the ice goddess priestess senior sister? Her mother seemed to have called her as soon as she appeared to serve her. At that time, she thought she had misheard, but now, her mother used her actions to prove that she did not mishear. However, wasn't the ice goddess priestess her master? Why was the seniority suddenly messed up? The ice goddess priestess's eyes were deep. Live for myself? Can I still live for myself? You make it sound so easy. Could it be that I can do it all over again? In my early years, I lived for my father's hatred. Later on, I lived for my master. The current me no longer has the strength to continue the mission my master left behind. Perhaps I really do have the right to choose my own end. However, can I still do it? The Bingling said somewhat emotionally, Yes, of course you can. Senior sister, as long as you are willing to work hard, I believe that you will find yourself, and also find everything you deserve. Everything is not over, far from it. For your life, you should search for it. Senior sister, there are too many things in your heart. It's time to change. Forget everything in the past and start over again. I want to see you smile from the bottom of your heart like when we were young. I want to see the good sister of the past. Don't torture yourself anymore. You have already suffered enough. Promise me, okay? You don't need to think about anything anymore. Everything has already become history. Our eyes must look forward, always look forward. The ice goddess priestess took a deep breath, her full breasts rising and falling. At this moment, she seemed to have been liberated and let out a long sigh. Yes, perhaps I really should look forward. Only by abandoning all attachments can I do what I want to do. Bing Qing and all the disciples of the Ice God Tower listened to my command. Lan Chen was still kneeling, and the Bingling also knelt down. They had never regarded themselves as disciples of the Ice God Tower. All the other disciples also knelt down. The only ones who remained standing were Nian Bing and her father, the Ice Goddess Priestess, and Halogen. The voice of the Ice Goddess Priestess became very calm. From today onwards, I will leave the Ice God Tower. From today onwards, I have nothing to do with the Ice God Tower. As soon as these words came out, it immediately caused an uproar. All the eyes of the disciples of the Ice God Tower were focused on the Ice Goddess Priestess. Their eyes were full of astonishment. Only the Bingling's mouth revealed a faint smile. Nian Bing looked at the Ice Goddess Priestess in astonishment. He didn't understand what was going on. The Ice Goddess Priestess's eyes radiated power. Her many years of accumulated power made all the disciples bow their heads. No one dared to say anything doubtful. The Ice Goddess Priestess said indifferently, After I leave, the position of Ice Goddess Priestess of the Ice God Tower will be inherited by the Bingling. From today onwards, all of you must obey her orders. As the Tower Master, she has the right to change the rules of the Tower. You don't have to doubt her strength. I'm not the only God-descending Master in the Ice God Tower. The Bingling's strength is not below mine. The Ice God Tower will always be the Ice God Tower of the past. I'm leaving. Perhaps all of this really has become an illusion. Chen, remember, if we meet again in the future, you have to call me senior sister. After saying all this, the Ice Goddess Priestess seemed a lot more relaxed. Although there was still no smile on her face, her gaze had become very peaceful. Looking at the distant horizon, she seemed to be thinking about something. The disciples of the Ice God Tower were still kneeling. The sudden change was really hard for them to accept. The older generation of disciples of the Ice God Tower naturally knew of the Bingling's existence. They never thought that the Ice Goddess Priestess would suddenly pass the position of Tower Master to her. Everyone had doubts in their hearts, but they really didn't dare to go against the Ice Goddess Priestess' wishes. Do you all understand what I'm saying? A distant voice came from the mouth of the Priestess of the Snow Goddess. Bing Qing was the first to respond. Yes, Lord Priestess. But no matter what you decide, you will always be our Lord Priestess." Saying this, she respectfully kowtowed 3 times to the Ice Goddess Priestess. Among everyone present, apart from the Bingling, she was the only one who knew how much the Ice Goddess Priestess had sacrificed for the sake of the Ice God Tower. At this time, she absolutely wouldn't stop the Ice Goddess Priestess from leaving, because she knew that only by truly leaving this place would the Ice Goddess Priestess be able to live a happy life. All the disciples of the Ice God Tower did the same thing as Bing Qing. The Ice Goddess Priestess' gaze fell on the Bingling. The Bingling stood up and stepped in front of her, smiling. "Senior sister, you've finally thought it through. Go, do as you wish. I think we sisters will definitely meet again, but at that time, I hope to see a completely different you. You can rest assured about the Ice God Tower. I'll do my best. It's also time for me to take over this responsibility." The Ice Goddess Priestess revealed a faint smile. Holding the Bingling's hand, she said, "On behalf of Master, I forgive you." The Bingling trembled. "Senior sister." The Ice Goddess Priestess smiled. "Did you know? In fact, until the day Master died, she never truly blamed you. She really loved you too much. In her heart, you've always been more important than me. Although I got everything that should have belonged to you, we weren't happy. Now it's really time to change everything. After I leave, you can change everything about the Ice God Tower. Don't worry, Master knows and will support you in the underworld. The tragedy that happened to us shouldn't happen to the disciples. I think you understand what I mean." The Bingling nodded. "Senior sister, when have you decided to leave?" The Ice Goddess Priestess said, "There's no need to deliberately choose a date. I'll leave now. I'm no longer a member of the Ice God Tower. You're the new Ice Goddess Priestess. I think our Ice God Tower is in your hands. It'll definitely flourish even more, won't it?" Letting go of her hand, a faint wind and snow condensed under the Ice Goddess Priestess' feet. Her charming body slowly rose from the ground. Wrapped in a faint blue light, she rose into the sky. She was leaving this place where she had spent almost her entire life. "Wait a moment," Nian Bing anxiously shouted. As he spoke, he had already arrived beside his mother. The Ice Goddess Priestess looked at him calmly. "Let's consider today's battle as my loss. If we continue to fight, the final victor will only be you. It's just that the casualties will be different. Your parents are already by your side. What else do you want?" Nian Bing took a deep breath. She said, "Lord Priestess, I want to. I'll just call you that. Although I don't know what the relationship between you and my mother is like. However, the most important thing for me to come to the Ice God Tower this time is to save my parents. At the same time, I also want to ask you something. I hope you can answer me, okay?" The Ice Goddess Priestess was slightly stunned. She said, "What do you want to ask?" "Then ask." Nian Bing said, "I heard that your tower has a disciple called Bingjie. Is that true? May I ask where she is now?" He had asked Lan Chen about Bingjie, but Lan Chen had blankly told him that there was no such person in the Ice God Tower. The Ice Goddess Priestess and Nian Bing's mother, Bing Ling, were stunned at the same time. After looking at each other, the Ice Goddess Priestess looked up at the sky and sighed. In the past, there was indeed a person called Bingjie in the Ice God Tower. However, Bingjie is already dead now. After saying that, she didn't stay any longer. Her body suddenly accelerated, flying into the distance. Nian Bing looked somewhat sluggishly at that blue figure gradually turning into a blue dot of light. She couldn't help but feel somewhat sad. Dead. So there really was such a person. She had actually died. Perhaps this was the best ending for her. "Master, I wish you all the best. I hope you can meet again underground." The name Bingjie that Nian Bing said was told to him by the cook god Zixio. That year, he competed with the cook god in cooking to obtain information about his master's enemy. In the end, the cook god told him this name after losing the competition. He also told him that this Bingjie was a disciple of the Ice God Tower. At that time, Nian Bing was very puzzled because her master lost to fire magic. But why was this person a disciple of the Ice God Tower? She was the love of her master's life, but at the same time, she had harmed half of her master's life. He came to the Ice God Tower mainly to save his parents. At the same time, he longed to see this person. It wasn't for revenge, because he was very clear that his master didn't want him to avenge her. After living with Cha Ji for 8 years, Nian Bing understood that although Cha Ji hated that woman, he loved her more. He had never forgotten that woman called Bing Jie. Child, how do you know about the existence of this person called Bing Jie? The ice spirit asked curiously. Nian Bing said, I heard it from a senior. Mother, is this Bing Jie really dead? The ice spirit sighed and said, the previous Bing Jie is indeed dead. I know that you must have a lot of questions in your heart right now. Let's go back to the Ice God Tower first. Senior Sister Bing Qing, please lead the disciples back to their posts. Bing Qing respectfully replied, Yes, Lord Priestess. As she spoke, she stood up and gave several orders in succession. The somewhat absent-minded disciples of the Ice God Tower returned to the Ice God Tower one by one. The ice spirit held Nian Bing's hand on one hand and her husband on the other. Together with Lan Chun and Pu Luan, they also entered the Ice God Tower. Once they entered the Ice God Tower, Nian Bing discovered that this was indeed a mystical place. All the decorations in the tower were made of crystal-like ice. Under the refraction of the light outside the window, it brought out a grotesque and variegated beauty, as if they were in a crystal palace. Child, this Ice God Tower was made by my master in the past by relying on her powerful magic power to bring back the 1,000-year-old ice from the extreme north. A lot of manpower and material resources were spent. For ice mages, cultivating in the tower would yield twice the results with half the effort. You see, every piece of ice has traces left behind by my master. Nian Bing glanced at Lan Chen beside her. The doubts in his heart were getting stronger and stronger. Wasn't Mother's master the Ice Goddess Priestess? But why did she call the Ice Goddess Priestess Senior Sister? What was going on with all this? Everyone arrived at the top of the Ice God Tower, in the room reserved for the Ice Goddess Priestess. Everything in the room was very clean and tidy. In the center, there was a huge circular ice bed with a diameter of 1 zhang. Faint ice fog was emitted from the blue ice bed, bringing a chill to the room. The ice spirit smiled and said, This bed is the thing that Master is most proud of. Although it is not a divine artifact, it is still very powerful. Although it is not a divine item, it is carved from a whole piece of ice jade. It is very rare and is the essence of ice. Bing Yun, I believe you've also cultivated on this bed before, right? Lan Chen nodded and said, Yes, this is something unique to our Ice God Tower. Only the Tower Master and the Tower Master's direct disciples can cultivate on it. If not for this ice jade bed, my magic wouldn't have advanced so quickly. The ice spirit let go of her husband and son's hands and walked to the ice jade bed. She stretched out her hand and touched the bed, feeling the extremely cold air. Her eyes revealed a trace of reminiscence. Yes, on this bed. We have all obtained many things. Bing Yun, there are some things that even you don't know. The ones who truly understand the inside story are only a few people in our generation. Now, this secret also needs to be revealed. Perhaps I won't be sitting on the Tower Master's seat for too long. In the future, you will be my successor. Oh right. This time, I still haven't thanked you for helping Nian Bing save me. I really didn't expect that the youngest disciple of our generation would be so flexible. Thank you, junior sister. Lan Chen's face reddened and she lowered her head and said, Senior sister, I don't think I can stay in the Ice God Tower. Moreover, I can't be the Ice Goddess Priestess in the future. The Ice Spirit looked at her with some surprise. She said, Bing Yun, why? I often hear from Senior Sister that you are more outstanding than us in the past. In the future, it is most suitable for you to inherit the Ice God Tower. Why don't you want to be the Tower Master? Lan Chen stole a glance at Nian Bing. Nian Bing was also looking at her. Hearing her mother's question, she hurriedly said, "Mom, I'm afraid that Bing Yun can't be your junior sister in the future. She should also call you Mom. She is already my wife." It turned out that when Lan Chen and Xing Luan saved the Ice Spirit and Rongtian couple, they were in a hurry. She and Xing Luan were also worried about Nian Bing's battle situation, so they didn't have time to explain. The Ice Spirit naturally knew her. When she heard her say that her son was here, she hurriedly followed and didn't have time to think too much. At this time, hearing Nian Bing's somewhat awkward words, the Ice Spirit and Rongtian couldn't help but look at each other. Lan Chen felt a little uneasy. She was afraid that the Ice Spirit and Rongtian wouldn't like her as their daughter-in-law. She lowered her head and fiddled with her clothes, not knowing what to do for a moment. Fortunately, Nian Bing held her small hand at the right time, giving her some confidence. Rongtian smiled. "Good boy, you are indeed my son. I didn't expect you to learn from me. You are also like your father, receiving the love of an ice beauty. Good, this is really good. I often heard from your mother that Bing Yun is the most beautiful among her generation of Ice God Tower disciples. She also has the best aptitude. Boy, you have good taste." When Nian Bing saw her father smile, she finally felt relieved. "Yes. Isn't it all because of your teaching?" The Ice Spirit said unhappily, "What is it? You. How old are you? You already seduced our Yuner." Nian Bing said with some grievance, "Mother, I am already 21 years old. It is not too much for me to have a wife at this age." The Ice Spirit was stunned. In her heart, she had always treated her son as a child. Yes, 10 years had passed. Her son had already grown up. It was time for him to start a family. Time passed so quickly. It had been more than 10 years. She had never fulfilled her duty as a mother. Although she didn't want to do all this, looking at Nian Bing's handsome face, the Ice Spirit's eyes turned red again. She reached out and hugged her son's tall body. She choked with sobs and said, "Child, it has been hard for you all these years." Nian Bing's eyes also turned red. Thinking of the days without his parents, he couldn't help but feel bitter. Seeing his parents again, his heart became unusually full. Just when the sadness in his heart was about to rise, he heard Rongtian say, all right. Today is a good day for our whole family. Don't cry. We need to talk more about happy things. Linger, don't you want to hear how our son has been through all these years?" The Ice Spirit and Nian Bing were interrupted by Rongtian. The sadness in their hearts instantly lessened. Nian Bing said in a low voice, "Mother, it shouldn't be a problem for Bing Yun to be your daughter-in-law, right? Her real name is Lan Chen. You can call her Chen. Actually, before coming here, she had already left the Ice God Tower. Just like you and Father. You must agree to our marriage." The Ice Spirit held Lan Chen's hand and Nian Bing's hand. She sighed and said, "Of course, it is your fortune to be able to marry Chen. She is so outstanding. How can I refuse? Chen, you don't have to worry. Even if you become the master of the Ice God Tower, you can still get married. The rules of the Ice God Tower must be changed. Otherwise, who knows how many tragedies will happen in the future. I don't want what happened to me and Rongtian to happen again." Lan Chen's face was already red. She wasn't as thick-skinned as Nian Bing, but when she heard the Ice Spirit's approval, she couldn't help but raise her head. Her eyes were glistening with tears. After all, she could only be considered Nian Bing's wife after getting the approval of Nian Bing's parents. When she thought of this, she almost subconsciously said softly, "Thank you, Mother." Hearing this, the Ice Spirit's heart was filled with warmth. "Good child, quickly tell Mother, when did you get married?" Nian Bing said, "Mother, we haven't officially gotten married yet. However, Chen will definitely be my wife. Actually, those marriage ceremonies are useless. As long as we acknowledge it, you will also acknowledge it. Isn't that enough?" The Ice Spirit said unhappily, "You're dreaming. You want to trick her into marrying you so easily. I know Chen's family background. Her parents are also people of status. How can we wrong her? When things here are settled, your father and I will find time to personally go to the Ottoman Empire to propose marriage. It must be a grand occasion. She only has one daughter, and we only have one son. Although she had been with her beloved husband all these years, the years of loneliness made Ice Spirit's heart yearn for excitement. Moreover, it was her son's wedding. Nian Bing muttered in a low voice, "It'll be tiring for you to personally propose marriage. You have to do it 3 times in total." The Ice Spirit's hearing was very good. "What did you say? What 3 times?" Nian Bing stuck out his tongue. However, he didn't dare to hide it in front of his parents. He hurriedly told them about his relationship with the 3 women. When the Ice Spirit and Rongtian heard that Nian Bing already had 3 wives and that they were all so outstanding, they couldn't help but be stunned. After a while, they finally came back to their senses. Rongtian praised, "Good, you're really my good son. You're really capable. You married 3 at once. It seems that our family has a successor." Chapter 210. Bing Ling rolled her eyes at him and said, "What? Are you envious of the word? Do you want to try marrying 3 of them?" Rong Tian's expression changed, and he said righteously, "I, Rong Tian, only have eyes for Bing Ling in my entire life. No matter how beautiful the girl is, she can't be compared to my wife." The serious expression on his face was obviously fake. But Bing Ling seemed to like it. The dissatisfaction on her face disappeared, and she smiled gently at him. Rong Tian also smiled back. Everything was understood without words. Seeing her parents' love, Nian Bing's heart warmed even more. "Mom, this marriage isn't urgent. First, tell me what's going on with the Ice God Priestess. Why does she look so strange? Isn't she your teacher? How did she become your senior sister? Did I hear wrongly? But I think I heard you call her senior sister a few times." Bing Ling sighed and said, "You didn't hear wrongly. She is my senior sister. Didn't you ask if there's a Bing Jie in the Ice God Tower? There is indeed a Bing Jie in the tower. Bing Jie is my senior sister. She told you that she had already died." She was referring to the previous Bing Jie's death, and the current Bing Jie has already obtained a new life. Nian Bing's body shook and she was stunned. She opened her mouth wide and couldn't say anything. "It can't be, the Ice God Priestess is my teacher Ghost Chef Cha Ji's lover. This is too ridiculous." But, when he thought of the final moment of his battle with the Ice God Priestess, when the Ice God Priestess suddenly turned into a mage of the same origin of ice and fire, he believed it a little. Bing Ling continued, "That's right. She is my senior sister. Actually, the Ice God Priestess in your impression is already dead. She is my teacher. More than 10 years ago, when my teacher captured me and brought me back to the Ice God Tower, because her mood was affected, she cultivated too quickly, causing her to go mad. At that time I regretted it. I really regretted it a little. It was all because of me that Master became like that. In the Ice God Tower, my teacher had 2 direct disciples. One was me, and the other was my senior sister Bing Jie. That is the Ice Goddess Priestess you saw. After Master suffered from chi deviation, she forcefully suppressed her injuries and didn't blame me anymore. She was even willing to pass the position of Tower Master of the Ice God Tower to me. It was decided to hold a ceremony. Bestow the position of Pagoda Master on me in front of all the disciples of the pagoda. But on the day of the disaster, you and your father came. When I saw you, how could I still be in the mood to be the Tower Master of the Ice God Tower? For fear that you will come to harm. After that, I gave you the Ice Goddess Stone. After you left, your father and I were sealed by our disheartened Master. At that time, Master was almost unable to suppress the energy backlash from her cultivation deviation. The Ice God Tower was the culmination of her life's work, and she had to find someone to inherit it. And this person is my senior sister. At this point, the Ice Spirit paused for a moment before continuing. It's no wonder that the people in the tower don't know about my senior sister's existence. Senior apprentice sister entered the sect earlier than me, but her innate talent is slightly inferior to mine. Moreover, her constitution is very strange. She has a body of the same origin as ice and fire. Nian Bing, this point. You are the same as her. At that time, Master took a fancy to her body's uniqueness and accepted her as a disciple. Although senior apprentice sister cultivated very hard, her comprehension was always a bit lacking, which made Master very dissatisfied. Therefore, she never had the intention of passing the position of Tower Master to her. Later, senior apprentice sister suddenly disappeared after returning home. At that time, your father and I still didn't know each other, so I stayed in the tower. Senior apprentice sister's disappearance lasted for a very long time. When she returned to the Ice God Tower, her entire person changed and became abnormally silent. She would often hide in a corner and cry. The relationship between senior apprentice sister and I has always been very good. Although Master was extremely dissatisfied with senior apprentice sister's appearance and punished her to enter seclusion. Before she reached the Archmage realm, she was not allowed to take a step out of seclusion. But because of Master's favor, I was able to see her often. It was because of this that most of the disciples in the tower only knew that Master had me as a direct disciple. Only a few older senior apprentice sisters knew of senior apprentice sister Bingjie's existence. One day, I found an opportunity to secretly hide in senior apprentice sister's seclusion place. Only then did I know what happened to senior apprentice sister. It turned out that when senior apprentice sister returned home to visit her parents, she found out that her father was about to die. Senior apprentice sister lost her mother when she was young, and it was her father who raised her. To her, her father was the most important person. Her father's death immediately caused a huge change in senior apprentice sister's mentality. Her father was originally a chef, but because he was depressed after competing with a very famous chef in the God of Cookery tournament, he died. At that time, her father died unable to rest in peace. Until his death, he still wanted to defeat that chef. Because of this, senior apprentice sister swore that she would definitely use her culinary skills to defeat her father's murderer and destroy his reputation. Because of this, it was also because of this matter that senior apprentice sister disappeared for a period of time. She became the disciple of a good friend of her father's and learned cooking for a period of time. Later on, she used some unknown method to actually defeat that enemy and forced that chef to sever his own hand tendons and retire from the world of cooking. Sadly, during the process of her contact with that chef, she actually fell in love with that person. It was also because of this that senior apprentice sister was destined to live a miserable life. Although she had returned, her heart had long been broken. She was very clear that the chef she liked had always placed cooking first in his life, but she had ruined his life. How could the two of them be together? So, everything was over. Everything had turned into a bubble. Senior apprentice sister could only come back and silently suffer the torture of her heart. She was a very pitiful person. Nian Bing bitterly smiled and said, "The master she worshipped was probably the camel god of cooking, Zixio. Mom, I know who your senior apprentice sister fell in love with. That was my master. In the world of cooking, he was known as the ghost chef. And then?" The ice spirit looked at Nian Bing in shock and said, "Senior apprentice sister had always been in seclusion. Apart from enduring her own pain, she could only cultivate magic. Several years later, when I left the Ice God Tower, I met your father. Later I had you. It was only when I had my own lover that I deeply understood the sorrow in senior apprentice sister's heart. Later, you and your father came to find me. Master was extremely disappointed in me, and had no choice but to release senior apprentice sister, who had already cultivated to the level of Archmage. As for your father and I, we were sealed in senior apprentice sister's death pass. Not long after, senior apprentice sister came to see me. She told me that Master had already died and had passed on the position of Ice Goddess Priestess to her. However, because Senior Apprentice Sister had never appeared in the Ice God Tower, it could be said that she had no prestige. Thus, Master ordered her to use magic to change her appearance to Master's and continue the glory of the Ice Goddess Priestess. Before Master died, she used a special method to pass on her magic power to Senior Apprentice Sister, causing her to become a new god descending Master and open 2 apertures. Before Master died, she ordered Senior Apprentice Sister not to let me and your father go unless one day my strength was stronger than Senior Apprentice Sister's. Senior Apprentice Sister didn't dare to disobey Master's order. At the same time, she was also afraid that the Roang family would chase after us. Thus she kept us there. Child, now you should understand that Senior Apprentice Sister would never harm me and your father. Lan Chen said, Senior Apprentice Sister, no, Mom, you mean to say that the one who had been teaching me magic was not Master, but Senior Apprentice Sister Bingjie? But I didn't feel any difference between her and Master. The Ice Spirit smiled and said, Silly child, you were still young at that time. Around the time you were less than 10 years old. Senior Apprentice Sister Bingjie had already replaced Master's position. With her familiarity with Master and her magic power, how could you have discovered it? As you gradually grew up, you had already adapted to Senior Apprentice Sister's aura. Naturally, nothing would have happened. Actually, you have never truly seen Senior Apprentice Sister Bingjie's appearance. Now that she has left, if my guess is correct, she should have gone to look for her lover. I hope she can find him. If that person can forgive Senior Apprentice Sister, perhaps the latter half of Senior Apprentice Sister's life will become happy. That is what I want to see the most. I will give her my blessings. Nian Bing said with a bitter smile, Mom, I'm afraid that won't happen. Because my master is already dead. The Ice Spirit's whole body shook. She involuntarily said, What? You said that person is already dead? Nian Bing nodded and said, A few years ago, when I left the Peach Blossom Forest, Master had already died. Perhaps your Senior Apprentice Sister still doesn't know, but Master has always been living in the Peach Blossom Forest, not far from here. Perhaps Master has always wanted to see your Senior Apprentice Sister. However, this is the Ice God Tower. With my Master's strength aside from his culinary skills, how could he come here? The Ice Spirit looked at Nian Bing somewhat absent-mindedly. Dead, he actually died. If Senior Apprentice Sister knew, I'm afraid. Nian Bing sighed and said, Perhaps this is the punishment she deserves. Back then, although Master defeated her father, that was in a formal competition. Originally, she shouldn't have wanted to take revenge, and even more so shouldn't have destroyed Master's heaven-defying hands. The mistake has already been made. Even if Master is still alive, the Mang Di in his heart won't disappear so easily. The matter has already passed, and Master is already dead. Mom, don't worry. Just let nature take its course. Back then, if the stock market was my master, I'm afraid I would have died long ago. Don't you want to hear my story? Then I will tell it to you. Nian Bing's story lasted from morning to night. He tried his best to hide all the dangerous situations that he had encountered. He only recounted his experience once. When Roang Tian learned that Prince Roang had already allowed Nian Bing to return to the Roang family, his eyes became moist. Just like how the Ice Spirit always thought of herself as a disciple of the Ice God Tower, he also always thought of himself as a member of the Roang family. An entire day passed. Nian Bing realized that today seemed to have passed by exceptionally quickly. Even though Bing Jie had reminded him of his master who had passed away, he still felt a sense of bliss from seeing his parents. In front of her parents, she didn't need to be so strong. In front of them, she could always be a child. Another benefit of the West Meridian acupoint gradually came into play on this day. The Xiantian Qi nourished Nian Bing's body and constantly restored his bodily functions. His injuries were slightly lighter than those of the snow goddess priestess Bing Jie. Under the effects of the Xiantian Qi, although his strength was far from fully recovered, his injuries were gradually recovering. Moreover, she also had light magic. Recovering to her peak state was only a matter of time. At this moment, Nian Bing had already talked about the godly mainland and Halogen. After hearing Nian Bing's description of the godly mainland, Rong Tian and the ice spirit's expressions became much more serious. Rong Tian said, "Nian Bing, have you told your grandfather about this?" Nian Bing nodded and said, "I've already told you. Grandfather didn't give me any advice. He only told me to deal with it myself. Moreover, I'm only guessing about the godly mainland's movements. I can't come to a conclusion yet. Father, what do you think I should do? Should I help the lost continent return, or stop it from returning?" When saying this, he deliberately glanced at Halogen. Halogen didn't have any expression on his face. Only Chen stood at the side and listened in silence. Rong Tian sank into deep thought. Nian Bing was also thinking. Now that his parents had been rescued and the Feng people's matter had been resolved, the next most important thing for him was to face the approaching day of extreme Een. If he chose to stop the lost continent from returning, it would be very easy. With the strength of the godly mainland's experts and the 7 dragon kings, it would be impossible for him to succeed. That lich evil moon had almost no chance, but he really didn't want to associate with those gods. Although Nian Bing didn't know where the other gods were, he was certain that they must have caused a lot of trouble for the Yangon continent. He really didn't want the godly mainland to continue existing like this. Otherwise, as soon as the gods returned to the godly mainland, the situation in the Yangon continent would definitely spread there. At that time, who could guarantee that the gods wouldn't come to this continent in large numbers? What could they bring? What would they bring? Nian Bing could only think of the word disaster. The threat of the godly mainland was very big. However, Nian Bing also thought of the unpredictable lost continent at the same time. A total of 10,000 years had passed. God knows what changes would happen to the lost continent. If the people of the lost continent also became like the godly mainland, once they returned, the destruction that they would cause would not be any smaller than the godly mainland. It might even cause more trouble. What troubled Nian Bing the most was that legend. Whoever used Miorda's bottle of sealing to summon the lost continent back would become the master of the lost continent. If that despicable evil moon became the master of the lost continent, then the Yangon continent would also suffer a calamity. Thinking of this, Nian Bing's heart became even more chaotic. Bing Yun stood behind Nian Bing. Her hand was always on Nian Bing's shoulder. Pure Xiantian Qi was constantly helping Nian Bing recover. Although her Xiantian Qi wasn't strong enough, the constant transmission greatly increased the speed of Nian Bing's recovery. Halogen suddenly said, "Nian Bing, you don't have to feel troubled because of me. Do what you want to do. As a person of the lost continent, I will only work hard for the lost continent. Even if we stand on opposing sides, I won't blame you. We will always be good brothers. Fighting for our ideals has always been the tradition of us dwarf." Nian Bing smiled bitterly and said, "Now the most difficult thing for me is that I don't know which choice is right. I also don't know what I should do. However, the godly mainland in front of me is definitely not easy to deal with. Bribery is very likely to bring danger. And from the historical records of the lost continent, they just want to be free. It is far better than the reputation of the godly mainland. Although most of the information I know is from the historical records of the lost continent, I will never forget the words of the dragon god. Moreover, you also know that there are 3 terrifying true gods in the godly mainland. Even if the lost continent becomes more powerful than before, they may not be able to contend against those 3 true gods. I have dealt with the god of order once. From what I know, that guy is not much better than a normal god. Such a powerful existence like him actually sneak attacked me. I am more inclined to let the lost continent return. Perhaps, only by messing up the water first can the peace of the Yangon continent be guaranteed. When the time comes, the godly mainland will definitely put all its experiences in the lost continent. However, if I do this, I will be helping Evil Moon. If that evil existence rules the lost continent, it will be a disaster for the continent itself. Moreover, I don't want to be enemies with Big Brother Halogen. At the same time, I also don't want to be enemies with the 7 Dragon Kings. Hearing Nian Bing say this, Rong Tian's eyes suddenly lit up. Nian Bing, I have an idea. Nian Bing was delighted. No matter who it was, they would always worship their father. Nian Bing was no exception, even if he now had great power. However, Rong Tian still had an extremely high position in her heart. What idea, Dad? Tell me quickly. Rong Tian smiled bitterly. Actually, this is also a method that is not really a method. After hearing what you just said, I will analyze it for you. Right now, you have a very bad impression of the godly mainland. You are afraid that their soldiers will pose a threat to our Yangon continent. However, as for the lost continent, you are afraid that the Lich will rule the lost continent. Not only will it be a threat to our Yangon continent, but the people of the lost continent will also face trouble. Since this is the case, now there is a ready-made method in front of you. You hate those evil fellows, your feelings are right, we cannot let them rule over the lost continent. However, the threat of the godly mainland is even more obvious now. Since this is the case, we can imagine that what you are most worried about is the legend of the lost continent. The legend of the curse of the 7 bottles. Then, regardless of whether this legend is true or not, we can first make preparations to avoid the danger brought by this legend. Nian Bing already somewhat understood her father's meaning. She hesitated for a moment, then said, Dad, you mean? Rong Tian smiled and nodded, saying, That's right. Since Evil Moon can bring people to summon the lost continent back, then, why can't you? If the lost continent submits to you in the end, you will become the new ruler of the lost continent. Then, won't all the problems be solved? No matter if it is fighting against the godly mainland or preventing the lost continent from harming the Yangon continent, it will no longer be a problem. Hearing Rong Tian's words, Halogen's eyes lit up. Yes, Nian Bing, Uncle's words are really too good. Why didn't I think of it? If you can become the new ruler of the lost continent, then what do we have to worry about? That's great, this is really a wonderful idea. Nian Bing smiled bitterly. I don't want to become the ruler of the lost continent. Brother Halogen, you are originally a person of the lost continent. I also think that Father's suggestion is very suitable. Then, why don't you be the ruler of the lost continent? Halogen was shocked. He quickly shook his hand and said, No, I definitely can't. I only know how to fight and kill. In this aspect, even 100 of me can't compare to one of you. Moreover, in our clan's records, although the races of the lost continent are very united, but the ruler of the lost continent will always be humans. It's not because of racial discrimination, but because humans have always been the smartest of all the races. Don't try to shirk away from this. If this is settled, then everyone will be happy. As for the 7 Dragon Kings, we can think of another way. I think the dragons don't have a good impression of the godly mainland. They may not stand on the side of those gods. Nian Bing did not reject Halogen's suggestion. He knew that now was not the time to be modest. He thought for a while and said, Although Father's idea is not bad, there are still many problems in front of us. First of all, we don't know how to summon the lost continent with Miorda's sealing bottle. If we want to seize control of the lost continent at the last moment, then we must ask a tiger for its skin. Evil Moon is not easy to deal with. With his cunning, we may not be able to succeed. Secondly, once the lost continent really appears, it is equivalent to provoking the godly mainland. The godly mainland, which is still sealed, will definitely open the seal at the first moment and attack the lost continent. At that time, war will be inevitable. Although I am not from the lost continent, I don't want to see the lost continent suffer. Rong Tian said, Son, I understand your thoughts. But don't you feel that you are escaping? What will come will come. even if the lost continent does not appear. With the godly mainland situation, one day, they will leave that hellish land and set foot on our home. Since that is the case, why don't we take the initiative? Only in this way can we take the initiative in our own hand. As for the problem you mentioned earlier, we can plan carefully. We will do our best to accomplish it. Hearing his father's words, Nian Bing nodded firmly. He realized that it felt good to have his father by his side. He didn't need to doubt his father's words. Previously, when it came to Prince Rong, he was very careful. Nian Bing had to be very careful, but when it came to his father, how could he not trust him? All right, since that is the case, we will temporarily settle on this. In about 3 months it will be the day of extreme. During this time, I need to make some arrangements. Although we are much weaker than the gods and ordinary humans, this is our territory after all. There are still many things we can use. The ice spirit smiled. Son, your father and I didn't expect that in these 10 years, your experience would be so rich. You have been by our side for too short a time, and we have never fulfilled our responsibilities as parents. No matter what decision you make, father and mother will stand by your side. In these 10 years, although your father and I were sealed, we didn't stop practicing magic for a single day. Although Master died that year and was very disappointed in me, before she died, she asked senior sister to give us her years of experience in magic. Now, I've already reached the level of an ice divine mage. Because of the environment here, your father's progress is slower, but he's already a fire archmage. When you need us, Mom and Dad will be your assistants. Nian Bing's eyes were a little wet. Looking at the kind smile in his mother's eyes, he secretly told himself that no matter what the result of this matter was, it was not necessary to let his parents be involved. Because he didn't want to see his parents, who had just escaped from the sea of suffering, suffer any more harm. Although he thought so in his heart, Nian Bing didn't show it on his face, and only nodded gently. Lan Chen smiled. Nian Bing, we have also talked for a day, and everyone is tired. You still need to heal. I will go and get some food first, and then everyone can rest early. When he heard the word eat, Nian Bing hurriedly said, Then I will do it. You, mother, do you know? When I was learning how to cook with my master, I always thought how wonderful it would be if I could personally cook a meal for you all. But there, I always thought you were dead. Every time I thought of this, my heart felt very uncomfortable. Today, I must let you personally taste the dishes I made. Bing Ling said with some worry, Silly child, what we eat is not important. As long as you are safe, that is our greatest happiness. Listen to me, you are not allowed to work hard today. Do you think senior sister's strength is a joke? Although I have worked very hard these years, I know that compared to senior sister who inherited master's ability, I still have a big gap. You fought with her and didn't rest, your body won't be able to take it. Alright, listen to me, rest well today and cook for us. There will be plenty of opportunities in the future. Although Nian Bing was a little disappointed, he wouldn't refuse his mother's words. He could only look at Rong Tian for help. Rong Tian laughed and joked, Don't look at me. Don't you know that your mother is now a dignified ice goddess priestess? It is easy for our family to make decisions. Bing Ling blushed and said, Annoying, you only know how to make fun of me. Alright, Chunchen, let the disciples of the tower bring some food. Sigh, from tomorrow onwards it seems that I will also be busy. Taking over the position of ice goddess priestess wasn't a simple matter. She still had a lot of things to do. There was no lack of powerful magicians in the conflict zone. It wasn't easy to convince them wholeheartedly. Lan Chen left the room. Bing Ling pulled Nian Bing to the side and used magic to cover herself and her son, so that their voices wouldn't be heard. She said in a low voice, Nian Bing, are you really married to Chunchen? Nian Bing scratched his head and said, Mother, we can't be considered married. However, we are indeed together. Bing Ling suddenly said, So that's how it is. I wish Chunchen was still a virgin. Nian Bing, your father and I weren't by your side when you were young. If there's anything you don't understand about matters between men and women, you can ask your father. At this point, she couldn't help but blush. Nian Bing was sweating in his heart. Mother, are you sure you didn't see wrongly? I actually already did that with Chen Chen. How could she still be a virgin? Bing Ling laughed and said, How could I see wrongly? How could I see wrongly in this aspect? The Ice God Tower has its own special way of identifying a virgin. Look at Chen Chen, there is a layer of lustrous membrane on her eyes. Why am I telling you this? Anyway, what I mean is that she is still a virgin. Nian Bing looked at his mother in a daze. His mother didn't look like she was joking with him. However, he and Chen Chen had already done it. What was going on? Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind and he immediately understood. The reason why his mother said that Bing Ling was still a virgin was probably related to the changes in the Phoenix volcano. Could it be that because of the rebirth of the Phoenix, even her body had once again become a perfect virgin? When he thought of this, Nian Bing couldn't help but feel a surge of warmth in his heart. Nian Bing stayed in the Ice God Tower for half a month before reluctantly leaving. Bing Ling had already become the new priestess of the Ice Goddess. She and Rongtian naturally didn't need to go to the Feng people. This was also an idea that Nian Bing had. He originally didn't plan to return to the Feng people in a short period of time. When Nian Bing left the Ice God Tower, he left Lan Chen behind. Other than needing Lan Chen to help his mother with the matters of the Ice God Tower, he also had some selfish motive. Of course, he definitely wouldn't let Lan Chen know about this. These days, he originally wanted to test whether or not Lan Chen was still a virgin. However, he never got the chance. Due to the replacement of the priestess of the Ice God Tower, the Ice God Tower fell into temporary chaos. Lan Chen was busy modifying the rules of the tower with Bing Ling every day. When he saw her tired appearance at night, how could Nian Bing have the heart to ask for anything else? A cold wind blew. The characteristic cold current of the Ice Moon Empire had already swept through the entire north. Traces of ice and snow could be seen in every corner of the empire. After eating breakfast, Nian Bing and Halogen left the Ice God Tower. Walking on the main road, Halogen said, Nian Bing, I really envy you. Nian Bing said, Big brother, do you know why I used the longevity blade to help you change your appearance and why it went so smoothly? Actually, I can feel that your mother's soul is in the longevity blade. In fact, she has never left you. Chapter 2:11. Halogen stopped and said with a trembling voice, You're telling the truth? Nian Bing nodded and said, Yes, don't you feel that the longevity blade's aura is very familiar? Halogen's eyes were a little moist. He lowered his head and looked at his own tall body. No one knew what he was thinking. Nian Bing hugged his shoulder. Big brother, thank you. Thank me? Thank me for what? Halogen looked at Nian Bing with some surprise. Nian Bing smiled and said, Thank you for always being by my side and supporting me. No matter what I do, you will always be there. Do you know? It feels so good to have you. Us brothers together, we can't be stopped. Halogen smiled and said, However, your heart is really ruthless. You actually left just like that. Kong Dong, accompany uncle and parents for a while more. Nian Bing smiled bitterly and said, I also don't want to leave. However, the situation is tense now, I can't not leave. Since I have already decided to help the lost continent return, then I have to deal with many things in advance. If this matter can be completed smoothly. In the future, I don't have anything important to do. At that time, I can properly accompany my parents. Halogen sighed softly and said, Nian Bing, maybe they didn't think of it, but I am by your side every day, so I more or less know what you are thinking. When you were at Feng People, you immediately left after cultivating, and left Feng Nu and Longling behind. And this time, when you went to Ice God Tower, you also left Lan Chen behind, saying that you have to go to Ice Moon City to do something. Actually, you don't want them to take risks with you. I think, if not for my relationship with the lost continent, I'm afraid you would think of a way to leave me in one place. Nian Bing forced a smile and said, How can that be? Big brother, I will definitely bring you along. Halogen laughed and said jokingly, All right, brother. I know you are doing this for our good. But you can't ignore your own safety. What if something happens to you? I'm afraid the world will fall into chaos. Seeing Halogen's smile, Nian Bing couldn't help but smile bitterly. Big brother, you didn't tell them that, right? I thought I did it very naturally and didn't reveal any flaws. How did you guess? Halogen smiled and said, Yes, I think they haven't guessed your thoughts yet. The reason why I can guess this is because I place too much importance on the Lost Continent. Every time you talk about the Lost Continent, I pay special attention to it. So, I found a problem. When you mentioned that Miordas's bottle of sealing was about to lift the curse, you only said that it would be in a place of extreme ease, but you never said the exact location of that place. That's how I judge that you didn't want them to take the risk with you. Am I right? Nian Bing was stunned for a moment. Big brother, you're really observant. Indeed, I don't want them to keep risking their lives with me. You also know that when that day comes, how many powerful experts will gather in that place of extreme ease. Especially when we decide to help the Lost Continent return, that's equivalent to going against the 7 Dragon Kings and all the gods. Danger is inevitable, so... Halogen raised his hand, stopping Nian Bing from continuing. I understand what you mean, you don't need to explain. Just remember, don't leave me behind when the time comes. I can understand your feelings. If it were me, perhaps I would do the same. Nian Bing heaved a sigh of relief and said, Thank you, big brother. Let's go quickly. My coming to Ice Moon City is indeed not a pretense. I really have something to do there. Since we have already decided to help the Lost Continent return, then we must consider the changes that may happen once the Lost Continent returns. You have to know that the Lost Continent is bordered by our continent and the gods' mainland. So, in the key places, we must station a large number of troops to guard against any accident. Halogen suddenly said, So that's how it is. You have thought about it thoroughly. Looks like your identity as the Blood Lion sect's leader will have to display its power again. Nian Bing smiled and said, Not only the identity of the Blood Lion sect's leader. The Lost Continent's previous location was at the Tiandong mountain range, which was connected to our Yangon continent. And at that time, the Ottoman Empire was located, which was very close to the Ice Moon Empire. So, what we need to do now is to station a large number of troops there, and they must all be experts. This requires the cooperation of the two empires. I think the Ice Moon Empire won't have any problems, and the Ottoman Empire has Luo Ro as the Prime Minister. With her intelligence, she should be able to succeed. As long as we can cut off any worries, we can also do what we want to do. Halogen said, Yes, let's do it. But have you thought about what we are going to do? Before leaving the Ice God Tower, you said that you would discuss it with uncle and parents after returning from the Ice Moon Empire. But looking at you now, I'm afraid you don't plan to go back. Nian Bing smiled and said, Big brother, you still say you aren't smart? That's right, I really don't plan to go back. But I haven't thought of a countermeasure yet. Evil Moon's side is weaker, but Evil Moon is a lich. His strength cannot be underestimated. Last time when he fought with the 7 Dragon Kings, he didn't use his full strength. As for how strong he is, I don't know at all. Moreover, he still has a few strong subordinates. It will be very difficult for the two of us to deal with all of them. As for the 7 Dragon Kings and those gods, we don't even need to think about fighting them, there is no chance at all. There are still more than 2 months left. I need to think about it carefully and find the best way. Halogen smiled and said, Okay, no matter what method you find, I will support you. I really want to see what the place where our ancestors lived looks like. I wonder how our clansmen on the Lost Continent are doing. Nian Bing said, We will definitely succeed. With a faint smile, Halogen said, I also firmly believe in this. The two of them didn't advance very fast. They left the Ice God Tower in the morning and arrived at the Ice Moon Empire at noon. As soon as they entered the city, Halogen told Nian Bing that he was hungry. Looking at Halogen's longing eyes, Nian Bing knew that he wanted to eat the food she made. Thinking of food, Nian Bing was somewhat disappointed. During the half a month in the Ice God Tower, he had been cooking for his parent. He was surprised to find that not only did his culinary skills not decline, but because of the increase in his energy, his control of food became more precise, and the food he made tasted better. If it wasn't for the important matter at hand, he really wanted to compete with the winner of the competition, Little Tian, to see whose culinary skills were better. Big brother, what do you want to eat? As long as it's made by you, anything is fine. This time in the Ice God Tower, it was really satisfying. Nian Bing, the food you make is getting better and better. Do you know, although it's only been half a month, Uncle and Auntie's complexion is clearly much better. Also, their appetite has increased a lot compared to before. I don't know if they can still eat normal food after you leave. Nian Bing bitterly smiled. There's nothing we can do about it. Big brother, let's go. We'll find a random restaurant and I'll think of a way to cook for you. Ever since Yen Feng ascended the throne, the country had become more prosperous as the political situation in Ice Moon City stabilized. And this was the capital of the entire Ice Moon Empire, so it was naturally more obvious. On both sides of the road, all kinds of shops were very lively. In the distance, Nian Bing already saw a large restaurant. Nodding at Halogen, the two of them walked towards the restaurant. When they reached the entrance, a waiter immediately greeted them. Do you want to eat? Not only do we have all kinds of delicacies from our own country, we even have food from other empires. The price is also very reasonable. Nian Bing smiled. Okay, we'll eat here. The two of them were led into the restaurant's lobby by the waiter. They were very casual people, so they found a table by the window and sat down. This restaurant was medium-sized, and it was currently lunchtime. Although it couldn't be said to be full, there were still 70 to 80% of the customers. It seemed that business was very good. The waiter first poured hot tea for Nian Bing and Halogen to warm them up, then came over with the menu. Nian Bing smiled. Okay, we don't need a menu. How about we talk to your boss and borrow the kitchen? It was the waiter's first time encountering such a request, but the quality of the service staff here was not bad. After a slight pause, he replied, I'm sorry, sir, we don't have this service here. If you really want to cook yourself, I'll have to ask my boss. He looked at Nian Bing's eyes more cautiously. In the culinary world, situations like kicking up a door and kicking up a restaurant did happen, but it mostly happened in famous restaurants. Their restaurant could only be considered a medium-sized one. Although the dishes were unique, there was still a big gap between them and a high-class restaurant. Kicking up a door and kicking up a restaurant had never happened before. Nian Bing waved her hand, letting the waiter go. After a while, a middle-aged man in luxurious clothes walked over. This person had a medium build, an ordinary appearance, and a face full of smiles. One look and you could tell that he was a tactful person. Although his clothes were luxurious, they were dark and not very eye-catching. Two sirs, I heard from our waiter that you have a special request. Nian Bing nodded. Yes, we want to borrow your kitchen to cook something for ourselves. We're used to eating our own food, so the taste of the food outside is always worse. This is the price. As she spoke, she flicked a purple crystal coin, which landed in the middle-aged man's hand. The middle-aged man was stunned for a moment. Looking at the purple crystal coin in his hand, the smile on his face became more amiable. However, he quietly placed the purple crystal coin on the table and pushed it in front of Nian Bing. I'm sorry, sir, our kitchen is really not open to the public, please forgive us. Actually, our dishes are not bad, why don't you try it? Nian Bing was a little surprised. One purple crystal coin was enough for the two of them to have a big meal in the most luxurious restaurant, but the other party was not moved. This really surprised her. Why, did I give too little money? The middle-aged man shook his head. No, you gave a lot of money. I can also guess that your culinary skills must be very good. But, for the dignity of this restaurant, I can't allow you to cook here. Nian Bing suddenly realized that the other party had chosen them to kick up a fight. But it was no wonder, there were not many restaurants that allowed her to cook. Smiling slightly, she said, "Since that's the case, then forget it. Big brother Halogen, let's eat in another restaurant." As she spoke, Nian Bing stood up, Halogen also stood up. Since they were not allowed to cook here, Nian Bing thought that she could only go back to the Blood Lion cult's Ice Moon Hall. The kitchen there would not refuse her. The two of them were about to walk out when they heard the middle-aged man suddenly say, "Wait a moment, two sirs, please wait." Nian Bing turned around and said, "What's wrong? Is there anything else?" The middle-aged man said, "Looking at the two of you, you should also be chefs. Only chefs cannot be used to other people's food. Our restaurant just so happens to be lacking two chefs. If the two of you are willing, the remuneration can be discussed." Nian Bing and Halogen looked at each other and could not help but laugh. Not to mention Halogen, with Nian Bing's identity, how could she be a chef in a restaurant? Even if she wanted to be a chef, she would have to go to a top restaurant like Clear Breeze Restaurant. The middle-aged man looked at the two of them and could not help but feel a little embarrassed. He hurriedly said, "Although our restaurant is small, our business has always been good. Moreover, we have always treated our chefs well. Why don't the two of you state your conditions?" In his opinion, the chefs who dared to challenge him definitely had good culinary skills. But how could he know that Nian Bing and Halogen had only come here to eat? Nian Bing smiled and said, "Thank you for your appreciation, but I think there is no need for that. Big brother Halogen, let's go." The two of them turned around and walked out. Just as they reached the door, a warrior wearing a warrior's uniform suddenly came up to them. Nian Bing and Halogen did not pay attention at first, but when the warrior approached them, he did not have the slightest intention of avoiding them. The two of them could not help but stop. When the two of them stopped, the warrior also stopped. After glancing at Nian Bing, he hurriedly lowered his head and said, "The two of you, are you going to the Warriors' Union?" Nian Bing's heart moved and said, "That's right. We want to learn some lion dance techniques, especially the bright yellow lions. I am very interested." The warrior's face revealed a respectful expression and hurriedly said, "The two of you, please follow me." After saying that, he turned around and walked away. Nian Bing secretly praised in her heart. The Blood Lion sect was indeed the continent's most powerful underground force. She had just arrived at Ice Moon City and was already discovered by the sect's spies. What he had said earlier was the Blood Lion sect's incision. When the warrior heard it, he would naturally understand. The three of them walked very quickly. In a short while, they had already arrived at the Warriors' Union. Under the warrior's lead, they passed through the messy hall and arrived at the back of the Warriors' Union. At this time, the warrior respectfully said, "This subordinate greets the sect leader. Please wait in the meeting room for a moment. I will go and invite the hall master over." Nian Bing smiled and nodded. "You can go. By the way, ask the kitchen to prepare some ingredients. I will be there in a moment." The warrior replied and turned around to leave. Nian Bing brought Xing Luan into the meeting room and sat on the comfortable sofa. Although they didn't feel tired after walking all the way to Ice Moon City, they still felt comfortable sitting on the sofa that was very accommodating. As soon as they sat down, they were immediately served tea and snack. The meeting room was still the same as before. Although it was not luxurious, it was very clean and tidy, giving people a good impression. After a while, Yin Su's voice came from outside. "Sect leader, Yin Su requests an audience." His voice was very penetrating and directly floated into the room. "Come in." Nian Bing smiled indifferently. The door opened and Yin Su, who was wearing a green robe, walked in. His clothes were very thin and did not look like they should be worn in the cold environment of the Ice Moon Empire. He was indeed worthy of being an expert at the level of swordsman. When he saw Nianbing, Yin Su's eyes showed obvious excitement. He smiled and said, "Sect leader, it has been a long time since I last saw you. You are really mysterious." Nianbing smiled and said, "Come, Hall Master, please take a seat. Am I not here now?" Yin Su knew that Nianbing was not arrogant. He walked directly to the seat opposite him and sat down. "Sect leader, what orders do you have?" Nianbing pondered and said, "There are a few things that need to be done. I have a secret letter here. Use the fastest method to pass it to our Alland Hall Master in the Ottoman Empire. Ask him to do as he says." As he said that, a silver light flashed in his hand and a letter appeared in his hand out of thin air. Now was the time to act. With Luo Ro in the Ottoman Empire, it was the best time to infiltrate. In this letter, not only did it contain Nianbing's instructions to the Alland Hall, but there was also the necklace that Luo Ro gave him, but he kept the red gemstone on it. Yin Su took the letter. He said respectfully, "I will do it as soon as possible. I guarantee that the mission will be completed." Nianbing nodded and said, "This letter is very important. It must not fall into the hands of outsiders. Otherwise, it will have a great impact on our church. The person who delivers the letter must be reliable. Do you understand?" Yin Su nodded. He said, "Sect leader, don't worry. We have a special way to deliver the letter. It will not be a problem." Nianbing said, "That's good. This is the first thing. Do it as soon as possible. How is the situation in the Ice Moon Empire now? Are there any changes?" Yin Su shook his head and said, "No. The situation in the Ice Moon Empire is very good now. Everything is under our control. The speed of development is much faster than before. Elder Xuepu and I are here. You can rest assured. Sect leader, do you have any instructions for our Ice Moon Hall this time? I have been waiting for you to come every day." Nianbing said with a smile, "You want me to come? You want me to bring you some benefits, don't you?" After the completion of the last heavenly change, the Ice Moon Hall, which was originally in the lower middle of the Ice Moon Empire, became the most powerful hall in the Blood Lion cult. The status of each hall was determined by strength. The Ice Moon Hall controlled almost the entire Ice Moon Empire, so it naturally became the most powerful force in the Blood Lion cult. Yin Su also gained great benefits because of the heavenly change. When Nianbing was in the Huarong Empire, she had discussed with the 7 Blood Lion elders and decided that Yin Su and Xuepu would become elders with different surnames in the Blood Lion cult. When they grew old in the future, they would stay in the Blood Lion Hall and retire. Although the elders with different surnames did not have the power to kill almost everything in the Blood Lion cult like the 7 Blood Lion elders, they still had a lot of power. Yin Tu rubbed his hands and chuckled as he said, "I dare not do that. But, Sect Master, if there's anything you need me to do, just tell me. My subordinates are the best of the best, and I guarantee they'll do everything you ask." Regardless of whether it was the Dean Centipede that had interacted with many Dean Centipede or the other Hall Masters that had never seen Nianbing before, they no longer looked down on this young bishop. Just the change of the heavens had brought benefits to the Blood Lion sect that had not been seen in 100 years. This contribution was so great that Nianbing had completely stabilized his position in the Blood Lion sect. Nianbing thought for a moment and said, "I do have something to trouble you with. How about this? The Ice Moon Hall is on the right track now, so there aren't many problems for the time being. You can pick a group of elites from the main hall. You don't need a lot of people, just 100 will do. However, they have to be the strongest experts in the Ice Moon Hall. Most importantly, they have to follow my orders unconditionally, and they are not allowed to ask any questions. You will lead this group of 100 people. As for the benefits you want, it will depend on whether your group has the ability to obtain them. At the same time, pass on my order. The 500 Blood Guards of the Blood Lion Hall are to come to the Ice Moon City at the fastest speed and join your team of 100 people. It's best if they can get there within half a month. If the elders have any doubts, you can tell them that I have something important to do. The Blood Guards were the strongest killing force in the Blood Lion Hall. They directly listened to the 7 elders of the Blood Lion Hall. Only when the 7 elders signed an order at the same time could they be mobilized. Even if the sect leader wanted to mobilize the most powerful assassination force in the Blood Lion Hall, he had to get the consent of the 7 elders of the Blood Lion Hall. However, with what Nian Bing had done to the Blood Lion Hall, the 7 elders of the Blood Lion Hall would not refuse him to mobilize this group of people. In the last operation, the strength of the Blood Guards had left a deep impression on Nian Bing. 500 people, after finally breaking into the Imperial Palace, were unexpectedly unscathed, and very few were even injured. It was not that each of them was very strong. These 500 Blood Guards had an extremely ingenious cooperation, and each of them was a death warrior who killed without blinking an eye. Coupled with the use of poison, they had an extremely powerful attack power. Before the last operation, the Blood Guards rarely attacked with more than 50 people. Their greatest achievement was to rely on the cooperation of 30 people to assassinate hundreds of experts of an underground force without any damage to themselves. Hearing Nian Bing's words, Yin Tu immediately became excited. What? Sect leader, are we going to have a big operation again? Don't worry, I can choose 100 elite experts within 3 days. This time, no matter what the operation is, you must bring me along. Don't worry, if anyone dares to disobey my orders, I will be the first to take his life. Nian Bing smiled slightly and said, the people you choose must not only be strong. They must be absolutely reliable. Hall Master Yin, I have to tell you in advance that this operation is not like the last operation. Because this operation is more dangerous than the last one. However, the benefits we will gain are difficult to see on the surface. Yin Tu was stunned for a moment, but immediately said firmly, Sect leader, as long as it is your order, we, the Ice Moon Hall, promise to carry out without any doubts. Nian Bing nodded his head in satisfaction and said, that's good. Even though this mission is dangerous, there are some benefits for the 100-man team that you've chosen. Of course, the prerequisite is that they have to return alive from the mission. The day of extreme Yin was approaching. Without the help of Feng Nu and the others, Nian Bing could only think of the experts of the Blood Lion sect. However, in order to not affect the future of the Blood Lion sect, he did not want to mobilize too many people in the face of a possible crisis. Yin Tu said, Sect leader, will you be staying with us for this period of time? Oh right. There is one more thing I want to report to you. Nian Bing was stunned. Just as he was about to ask, the Tian Yen acupoint between his eyebrows suddenly pulsed slightly. A familiar and powerful spiritual fluctuation made him secretly surprised. Since returning to the Yangon continent, this was the strongest spiritual fluctuation he had felt. Even experts like deity Shi Luan and ice goddess priest Bing Jie were not as strong as this person's spiritual fluctuation. The door opened. A figure rushed in. Nian Bing Gij, a voice choked with sobs sounded, and the slim figure threw herself into Nian Bing's arms and burst into tears. Nian Bing's eyesight was very good. Although the person who came in was very fast, he still saw who it was. Among the people he knew, only she would call him that. This person was Kitty. Kitty's cries were full of sorrow, and she clung to Nian Bing's chest. After not seeing her for a long time, she seemed to have grown a little taller. Her crying made Nian Bing feel a little uneasy. He looked up at Yin Tu with an inquiring look. Yin Tu nodded at him, indicating that he was about to say Kitty. Nian Bing waved his hand at Yin Tuesday. Yin Tu understood and retreated, closing the door behind him. Nian Bing stroked Kitty's soft long hair, patted her back, and sent a gentle light element into her body to calm her down. Kitty, be a good girl. Tell me what happened. Why are you in the Ice Moon Hall? Did someone bully you? Kitty's cries were still full of sorrow, but with Nian Bing's comfort, her trembling body gradually calmed down. The uneasy feeling in Yen Bing's heart grew stronger. Although he didn't have time to observe the cat carefully, the feeling that the cat gave him was very different from before. Yen Bing had known Kitty for a long time. In his impression, Kitty had always been a happy little girl. Although she was only 3 years younger than Lan Chen and Long Ling, Yen Bing had always treated her as a younger sister. Ever since he knew her, this was the first time that he felt such deep sorrow from this cute white girl. He vaguely guessed that something big must have happened. What surprised Yen Bing the most was Kitty's mental fluctuation. When she was emotional, although her mental fluctuation was very unstable, it was unusually strong. It was so strong that even Yen Bing was secretly surprised. After a long time, Kitty's cries finally stopped. She sat down under Yen Bing's comfort. Her eyes were red, and her face was obviously thinner than before. Her face was pale, and her eyes were lifeless. She was still sobbing, but in contrast, she was exuding a strong aura. The invisible mental fluctuation spread to every corner of the room. Kitty seemed to have grown up. The childish look on her face was gone, replaced by endless sorrow in her beautiful eyes. Yen Bing held Kitty's little hand and said, "Kitty, what happened? Why are you crying so sadly?" Kitty's eyes were red, and she almost burst into tears again. She choked and said, "Brother Yen Bing, I finally see you. You have to avenge Kitty. Kitty, you're Kitty's only family member." Yen Bing was shocked and immediately guessed something. He said in a deep voice, "Kitty, calm down first. Did something happen to Uncle Hillard?" Kitty nodded. Tears flowed down again, and her hands were clenched tightly. It was also the first time that Yen Bing saw an unusually strong resentment in her eyes. "Dad is dead, Mom is dead, and my people are all dead. I'm the only one left. Kitty is all alone. Brother Yen Bing, Kitty is so pitiful. You have to avenge Kitty." Although Yen Bing had guessed something, when Kitty said that the entire Caucasian race had been destroyed, he couldn't help but show a look of horror in his eyes. Although Caucasians were not the most powerful race, they had never interacted with human society. Just like the Feng people, they were self-sufficient. Moreover, although Caucasians couldn't practice Do Chi or magic, they were born with strong spiritual power, which was the best strength to protect themselves. Although there weren't many people who could become summoning magicians, Hillard had left a deep impression on Yen Bing. His pet summoning was a nightmare for ordinary magicians. As a summoner who had reached the level of magician, who could kill Hillard and completely destroy the Caucasian race, Yen Bing thought to himself, there weren't many groups on the continent with such strength. Even if he wanted to completely defeat Hillard now, the possibility was not too high. "Kitty, tell me, what's going on? Can't your dad summon the Wind Dragon King and Karadiris?" With the Dragon King by his side, even a 13th grade master might not be able to hurt Hillard. Kitty said, "Uncle Carlo isn't here. He hasn't come back yet. However, Dad said that even if Uncle Carlo was here, we wouldn't be able to escape. It's so scary, so scary. There's blood everywhere, blood everywhere." Speaking of this, her eyes unconsciously showed a strong fear. Her body trembled, and she threw herself into Yen Bing's arms again. Yen Bing hugged Kitty's soft and delicate body. "Kitty, don't be afraid. Brother Yen Bing is here. He won't let anyone hurt you. Calm down and tell brother what happened, so that brother can avenge you." Chapter 212. In Yen Bing's warm embrace, Kitty calmed down a lot. She nodded and said, "That day, the weather was very good. The sun was very warm. After my brother sent me back, my father didn't say anything about Kitty. He just told Kitty to continue practicing magic. Kitty hated loneliness the most. When they weren't looking, I sneaked out. I just wanted to play nearby and then go home. The last time I sneaked out, my mother was very sad. Although Kitty wanted to come out and look for my brother, she was afraid that my mother would be sad again, so she didn't dare to go far. But when I went back, everything changed. Everything turned red. The valley where we lived was full of fire and blood. Uncle was dead, Sister Shiling was dead. They were all dead, all dead. At this point, Kitty was already sobbing. Nian Bing patted her back gently, waiting for her to continue. Just when Kitty didn't know what to do and was completely stunned, she suddenly saw a few people. There were a total of 6 of them, and they were all dressed very strangely. They were demons. Kitty was sure that they were demons. They were chasing after the rest of our people. My father tried his best to summon all his pets, but he could only watch them die one by one. My father kept protecting my mother, but those people were too strong. My father and mother couldn't beat them even when they worked together. They only sent out 2 people and they beat my father and mother until they were covered in wounds. Kitty was so scared. Kitty was really scared at that time. But Kitty was more afraid that my father and mother would be hurt, so I ran over and summoned my little pets to join the battle. At that time, my father looked so scary. He told me to run, but Kitty didn't know how to run at that time. I remember those 6 people very clearly. They were as fast as flying. Our people were all dead in a short while. There were many sisters and aunties who were forced to the ground by them and did some strange things to them. My father kept shouting and asking who they were. Why did they do that to us white people? Those people looked very annoying and scary. They said that they were God. He said that we white people have disobeyed God's will, so we must die. Bastard! Halogen shouted angrily. He slammed his palm on the tea table next to him, and the tea table immediately turned into fine powder. Although Kitty's explanation was not very clear, he and Nian Bing already understood that the person who destroyed the entire Caucasian race was a god from the Great Land. A strong hatred rose from Nian Bing's heart. Originally, he was not very determined to help the lost continent return. However, the actions of the gods and Kitty's sorrow had ignited the flame in his heart. At this moment, he no longer had any hesitation. Gods, these despicable gods would not even let white people go. Kitty wiped the tears from her face and said, "Dad became very scary at that time." Seeing the people die, Dad and Mom's eyes turned red. They used a special method to increase their spiritual power to a very strong level. They directly used their spiritual power to attack those bad guys and made them temporarily dizzy. Then, Dad and Mom took me and sat on Little Stutterer's back and ran out. Nian Bing was stunned. "Little Stutterer," Kitty said. "It was that golden-backed dragon king when we were together that time. Dad deliberately trained it so that it evolved very quickly. It could already say some simple words, but it couldn't speak clearly and always stuttered, so I called it Little Stutterer. If it wasn't for Little Stutterer blocking a lot of attacks, Dad and Mom would have died." Nian Bing said sadly, "Then what happened? Since you have already escaped, where is Uncle Hillard and your mother?" As he asked, he stroked Kitty's long hair so that she could feel some sense of security in his arms. This also allowed Kitty to reluctantly talk about the tragic experience even though she was emotional. Kitty sniffed and said, "Although we ran out, Dad said that those people would catch up soon. With Little Stutterer's speed, he couldn't shake them off. Even if he flew, it would be very difficult." At that time, Dad and Mom were already seriously injured. Dad wanted Mom and I to go first, but Mom didn't agree. They argued for a while, and after a while, we could already see those figures behind us. Although Little Stutterer could also fly, he could only fly low. And when he flew, he was not as fast as running on the ground. Those people were about to catch up with us. Just when Kitty thought that she would die like her clansmen, Dad summoned his last summoned beast, and so did Mom. In our white clan, as long as you are a summoner, you have your own sacred beast. Although it is the most powerful pet, it is also closely related to the summoner. If there is a problem with the sacred beast, then the summoner will also die. Nian Bing said with some surprise, "Sacred beast? Isn't Uncle Hillard's sacred beast the wind dragon King Caraderis?" Kitty shook her head and said, "No, that's not it. Uncle Carlo is the strongest summon, but he's the strongest. Although Uncle Hillard's sacred beast is strong, he doesn't belong to Dad. My dad and mom's sacred beasts are a pair of rainbow phoenixes. Phoenixes are very strong, and the rainbow phoenixes are the kings of phoenixes. They are very powerful. Moreover, they are dad and mom's sacred beasts, so they have stronger abilities than normal phoenixes. As long as dad and mom can use spiritual magic, the rainbow phoenixes can also use it. They can even display the most powerful strength. This sacred beast is something that every summoner of the White Clan starts to cultivate from the day they are confirmed to be summoners. It is a symbiotic relationship with the summoner. The sacred beast cannot be used casually. Every time it is used, the summoner's life force will decrease according to the amount of energy consumed by the sacred beast. Therefore, the summoning of the sacred beast is also called the last summoning of the White Clan. Dad and Mom have already summoned their sacred beasts once when they were in the clan. They cooperated with our clansmen to attack those guys. However, those guys are really very powerful. Even the sacred beasts can't do anything to them. However, it was different this time. Dad and Mom, they almost used their heart blood to combine with the sacred beasts at the same time. In an instant, they burst out with the most powerful strength and attacked those 6 bad guys. With the heart-blood combination, the sacred beasts can burst out with more than 3 times their usual strength and become extremely fierce. However, with the heart-blood combination, the final result will inevitably be the death of both the human and the beast, because in the process of combining, the sacred beast and the summoner have overdrawn all the potential. This method is only used when you know you can't resist it. Once you use it, you can't take it back. Kitty choked with sobs again. Nian Bing's clothes were soaked with her tears. Nian Bing's heart sank as she looked at Kitty's teary face. He felt a sharp pain in his heart. He had always treated Kitty as his own little sister. The originally happy Kitty had become a homeless orphan because of the appearance of those gods. Why did all of this happen? Why did those gods have to be so cruel to the white people who stood aloof from worldly affairs? Although he couldn't bear to let Kitty continue speaking, he was anxious to understand the whole process. He could only comfort Kitty's deeply wounded heart while asking in a low voice, "Then what happened? Uncle Hillard and the others?" Kitty kept her head down. "Dead. Dad and Mom both died. However, one of those 6 bad guys also died under the full-strength attack of the rainbow tiger phoenix that suddenly transformed. The others were also injured. After the heart-blood combination, the rainbow tiger phoenix's fighting power rose sharply until the moment of its death. Therefore, the heart-blood combination is the summoner's final desperate spell. Unless the difference in strength is too great, the enemy will not be able to withstand it. Unfortunately, it's too difficult to cultivate a sacred beast. Only a dozen of our clansmen have a sacred beast. The only ones who can use the heart-blood combination are Dad and Mom. Otherwise, no matter how powerful those bastards are, they would have to pay a painful price for killing our clansmen. Those bad guys are very cowardly. After one of them died and the others were injured, they suddenly ran away. At that time, the rainbow tiger phoenix was already at the end of its tether. It could have died at any time from the explosion of its energy. I didn't expect that those guys would be scared away. Nian Bing was stunned. Scared away? Thinking of the gods' selfishness and how much they cherished their own lives, Nian Bing naturally understood why they ran away. Perhaps they didn't know that the 2 rainbow tiger phoenixes were already at the end of their tether. They just didn't want to be hurt, so they chose to run away. After all, to them, nothing was more important than their lives. Kitty nodded and said, "Yes." At that time, they ran away. Kitty kept crying. "I was afraid that something would happen to Dad and Mom. Those guys were too powerful. Dad said that every one of them could defeat Dad. But, if they were so powerful, why did they attack us white people? Even when Dad and Mom died, we still didn't understand why. After those people ran away, Dad said that they would definitely come back. But, Dad and Mom used their heart blood to combine, so they couldn't move. Also, their faces were so scary. Kitty was so scared, so scared. Dad said that they couldn't live anymore. But, luckily, those people ran away early, so they had a chance. Dad and Mom said that they wouldn't die. They would always be with Kitty. Then, they used the special spiritual flame that we white people have to burn their own bodies. With the help of the rainbow tiger phoenix, they turned into energy and stayed in my body. Before Dad and Mom disappeared, they asked me to look for you and ask you to protect me. Then, they asked me to practice our white people's summoning technique. Unless I have absolute confidence, I'm not to take revenge for them. Nian Bing said thoughtfully. Then, are Uncle Hillard and your mother dead or alive? Mao Mao said blankly, I don't know either. There should be records of this in our clan, but I haven't seen much of it. Our clan's records have all been destroyed by those bad guys. After Dad and Mom died, I rode Little Stutterer here to look for you. Those bad guys didn't chase after me. I don't know if they were afraid or they didn't catch up. Brother Nian Bing, are Dad and Mom really dead? Hearing Kitty ask the same question, Nian Bing suppressed the sadness in her heart. Looking at Kitty's hopeful eyes, she forced a smile and said, Of course they're not dead. How could they bear to leave Kitty? I've encountered this situation before. From a certain perspective, your Dad and Mom exist in another form. Maybe, one day when you're strong enough, you'll be able to wake them up. Kitty, whether it's to take revenge for your Dad and Mom or to wake them up, you have to work hard from now on. Don't worry, with me here, those bad guys won't be able to find you. I'll definitely do my best to take revenge for you. He didn't know how to comfort Kitty. Even though Nian Bing had killed 2 gods before and had some dealings with them, he didn't expect these gods to be so cruel apart from their strength and selfishness. Annihilation. 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 If their goal was to exterminate all the races on the godly mainland, then his choice was right. No matter how many problems there were in the lost continent, they were not as direct as the problems in the godly mainland. The death of Hillard and his wife made Nian Bing's hesitation disappear. Kitty nodded seriously and said, Brother, Kitty will definitely work hard. After Dad and Mom's energy entered my body, Kitty's spiritual power increased a lot, and my pets also evolved very quickly. Kitty will definitely take revenge for Dad and Mom. Brother Nian Bing, Kitty only has you now, you can't abandon Kitty like Dad and Mom. Nian Bing pulled Kitty into his arms. Don't worry, Brother will always protect Kitty. Kitty, look, you've lost weight. Brother will make you something delicious, okay? Kitty blinked her beautiful big eyes and nodded. Looking at her tear-stained face, Nian Bing felt pity for her. He brought her to the kitchen to show off his exquisite cooking skills, and made a table full of delicious food. However, when the food was served, not only Nian Bing, but even Halogen, who was always good at eating, had a bad appetite. Kitty was only barely able to eat a little under Nian Bing's persuasion. 3 days later, a team of more than 100 people entered the mountain range not far from Ice Moon City. This mountain range was the place where Nian Bing hid after capturing Bing Yun. This place had left a deep impression on him, but this time, what he wanted to do was completely different. The Hall Master of Ice Moon Hall, Yin Zun, was very efficient. In 2 days, he had already gathered the most elite experts in Ice Moon Hall. After careful selection, the weakest among them was at least a great swordsman, and half of them had reached the level of a martial fighter. There were even 2 experts at the level of swordsman. It could be said that he had gathered almost all the battle strength of Ice Moon Hall. Nian Bing did not idle during these 2 days. He went to the palace of the Ice Moon Empire to meet Yen Feng. Just as he led the 100 people to this mountain range, an elite army of 50,000 people from the Ice Moon Empire, led by Marshal Shuepo, had already set off towards the Ottoman Empire. Nian Bing had become much more mature compared to the last time he had taken action. Since he was going to do it, he would consider all the possibilities that could happen. In the letter he sent to the Blood Lion Sex Aolan Hall, there was also a letter for the Prime Minister of the Ottoman Empire, Luo Ro. In the letter, He carefully told Luo Ro about the possible return of the lost continent, and asked her to arrange for the army to meet up with the army sent by the Ice Moon Empire. They would be stationed near the sky-shaking mountain range. If something unexpected happened after the return of the lost continent, then the two armies would be able to react quickly and avoid losses. No matter if it was Yen Feng or Luo Ro, they did not need a reason to trust Nian Bing. Furthermore, the matter of the lost continent was so important that Nian Bing had already sent the letter before meeting Yen Feng. It was because he trusted Yen Feng and Luo Ro's trust in him. He did not think of using the armies of the two countries to deal with the gods. After all, at their level, numbers would not be able to play a decisive role. The Ice Moon Empire and Aolan Empire had already started to develop quickly. Nian Bing naturally did not want them to suffer too much losses. As long as the sky-shaking mountain range did not have anything to worry about, Nian Bing could do what he wanted to do. Nian Bing discussed in detail with Yen Feng about the lost continent and the godly continent for an entire day. He did not hide anything about his knowledge of the two continents. After discussing with Yen Feng decided to fully support Nian Bing. As long as he had any requests, he would agree. He originally wanted to recruit a group of elite warriors for Nian Bing to command, but he was rejected by Nian Bing. The secret of the Blood Lion sect. Nian Bing would not let him know. Furthermore, what Nian Bing needed was a group that could completely listen to his commands. When he was still in the Ice God Tower, Nian Bing already had his own plans. For the upcoming crisis, he had already thought of a plan. Although his plan was not perfect, facing such a powerful god, he could only do his best. Lin Luan was still the same as before. Under the effects of the longevity sword, he looked like a mighty warrior of the human race. Nian Bing held Kitty's hand and the three of them walked at the front of the group. At this time, it was already the coldest season in the Ice Moon Empire. Nian Bing specially ordered people to make a thick fur coat for Kitty to keep her warm. After all, compared to the powerful spiritual energy of the Caucasians, their weaknesses were also very obvious. Their bodies could not cultivate magic or martial arts, so they were not much different from normal people. To this poor little sister, Nian Bing carefully took care of her, afraid that she would be hurt. As they walked, Lin Luan used his fighting energy to ask Nian Bing, "Brother, where are we going? Your subordinates of the Blood Lion sect are really good. There are more than 100 of them, but there is no chaos." Nian Bing looked back at the group behind him. Not far behind him was the Hall Master of the Ice Moon Hall, Yin Mang. The 100 people behind Yin Mang were all moving forward in an orderly manner. Although the wind and snow in this mountain range was very strong and the weather was very cold, just as Lin Luan said, they could always maintain a neat formation. There was no chaos. Moreover, each of them looked calm and did not talk to each other. As they walked, only the whistling of the north wind and their light footsteps could be heard. Nian Bing was very satisfied with this group of people. A group battle was not like a single battle. Victory could not be decided by individual strength alone. Teamwork was more important, especially when it came to obeying orders. There was probably no one more suitable than the Blood Lion sect members. Before leaving the Ice Moon City, Nian Bing had already ordered Yin Mang to leave some people behind to inform the 500 blood guards that were coming. As soon as they arrived, they would immediately come to this mountain range to meet with him. There was not much time left, only 2 months. However, in these 2 months, Nian Bing had a lot of things to do. The most relaxed person in the group was Kitty. Under the effect of Nian Bing's flying wind spell, her feet were always off the ground. She did not need to exert any strength and was pulled forward by Nian Bing. "Brother Nian Bing, when will we arrive? It's so beautiful here." Because she did not need to walk by herself, and because of the magic barrier cast by Nian Bing, she did not feel the cold around her at all. The soft fur coat on her body gave her an indescribable warmth. In these few days, under Nian Bing's persuasion, the simple Kitty had gradually walked out of her sadness. Early in the morning, they set off on their journey. Although the environment in this mountain range was harsh, they could see rare glaciers. It was the first time she saw the crystal-clear ice. The snow here was not very heavy, but the wind was abnormally cold. Under the blowing of the cold wind, the flying snowflakes and the silver-white glaciers that could be seen everywhere gave people a kind of hazy beauty. The sun's rays were not very bright, and everything around was white. Nian Bing held Kitty's hand tightly and said with a smile, "It's not far. Do you see the glacier in front of us? As long as we reach there, we will arrive at the place. Kitty, are you cold?" Kitty shook her head and said, "No, it's very warm. Brother, it's so good to be by your side. What are we doing here?" Nian Bing said, "You will know when we reach the place. However, I have to tell you in advance that we are not here to play. Although you are not the target of my training, you can't slack off. Let your pets practice well. The more powerful they are, the more powerful you will become." The place that Nian Bing had chosen was the largest glacier in the entire mountain range. Huge icicles could be seen everywhere. The surface of the brilliance was extremely difficult to borrow strength from, and it was extremely difficult to climb up. When they reached the glacier, Nian Bing stopped. Looking at the huge glacier in front of him, a trace of coldness appeared in his eyes. Yin Mang came up behind Nian Bing and whispered. He whispered, "Cult leader, what should we do?" Nian Bing smiled faintly and said, "Hall Master Yin, look at the undulating glacier. It is indeed one of the most beautiful scenery in the continent. For the next 2 months this will be the place where we will live. Pass down my order. Everyone, dig an ice cave on the cliff of this glacier. From now on, the ice cave will be the place where you will live. This is today's first task." Yin Mang didn't have any doubts. He nodded and shouted, "Sect Master has given the order. Disciples of our sect, listen to my order. Dig a cave in the glacier. 1 cave per person for living. Those with strong abilities will be on top. Begin." Under Yin Mang's order, 100 Ice Moon Hall subordinates all moved. They had been on the road for the whole morning. Although the cold weather made them tired, it didn't affect them too much. One after another, nimble figures leaped up and pounced on the slippery glacier. For a moment, the light of fighting energy flickered. Clear and crisp sounds came from the glacier. Most of the Ice Moon Hall disciples used sabers. With the fighting energy poured into them, the sabers became the tools to support their bodies. The most difficult part of digging an ice cave on the glacier was the beginning. It was very difficult to borrow strength from the glacier. Therefore, everything depended on one's ingenious use of Do Qi in order to have a chance of success. Looking at the movements of these 100 Ice Moon Hall elites, Nian Bing nodded with satisfaction. These subordinates of hers had indeed grown up in the north. They didn't use their fighting energy to bombard the glacier directly, because that would easily cause the glacier to crack. Instead, they poured their fighting energy into their sabers and dug an ice cave directly from the glacier. For ordinary people, this was an impossible task. But for these experts who were at least great sword masters, digging an ice cave wasn't too difficult. In less than an hour, numerous ice caves had been lined up neatly on the glacier in the front. Although the ice caves weren't too deep, these experts who grew up in the north were very experienced. The inside of the ice cave was curved. This way they could prevent the cold wind from blowing directly on their bodies, and try their best to keep their bodies warm. Before they set off, Nian Bing had ordered that no one was allowed to wear thick clothes or carry any weapons. This was a requirement for their ability to resist the cold. Yin Tang floated down, and the Ice Moon Hall disciples under his command rearranged their formation. Sect leader, the ice cave is complete. Nian Bing's gaze swept across the crowd. At this moment, he could see the level of their abilities. Yin Tang and the 2 swordsman-level experts still looked relaxed, as if they hadn't done anything at all. As for the martial masters, they only had some steam rising from their bodies. Their faces were slightly red, and their breaths were heavier than before. As for the weakest great sword master level experts, they didn't have it that easy. Their chests were constantly moving up and down, and their faces were red. Obviously, they had consumed a lot of energy. Nian Bing nodded to Yin Tang and said calmly, "You are all elites of the Ice Moon Hall. I'm sure many of you don't know the reason why I brought you here today. I'll tell you now." His voice wasn't loud, but everyone could hear every word clearly under the coverage of his spiritual energy. 2 months later, I will lead you and the 500 blood guards of the Ice Moon Hall to carry out an important mission. I think you can imagine how difficult a mission that requires 500 blood guards to participate in is. The 2 months before this will be the time when I will lead you to train. 2 months isn't a long time, but it isn't short either. I just want you to understand that if you work harder now, you will have a higher chance of keeping your lives when you carry out the mission. I know that the disciples of the Ice Moon Hall are all brave warriors who don't fear death. However, if they don't have to die, I'm afraid no one is willing to leave this world. I won't say anything else, but from now on, you must immediately carry out every order I give. If anyone slacks off, I won't punish them, nor will I kill them. However, I will make them leave this training group. The Ice Moon Hall is a united group. I hope that no one is left behind in the end. Otherwise, it will be a disgrace to the entire Ice Moon Hall. Do you understand? Nian Bing's voice suddenly became louder when he said the last few words. His mental energy covered every single person. All the Ice Moon Hall disciples shuddered under that extremely piercing voice. They clearly became much more excited. Understood. A huge wave of voices rang out. Everyone straightened their backs. They would rather face death than become a disgrace. That way, living would be even more unbearable than dying. Nian Bing smiled and looked at the subordinates trained by the Blood Lion sect with satisfaction. He said, "Good. Then what you are about to face will be the second challenge. Remember my words. No one is allowed to hide in the ice cave. This is your base. What you need to do is to work together and help each other to protect this base. The people beside you are all your comrades, your partners, your brothers. I hope that in the end you can still see 101 people here. Okay, get ready." Following Nian Bing's words, a huge rumbling sound gradually came from above. The expressions of the disciples of the Blood Lion sect, including the hall leader of the Ice Moon Hall, finally changed. As the rumbling sound grew louder and louder, they all understood what was about to happen. And all of this was caused by them. Behind the undulating glaciers was a huge, snowy mountain. Even during the warmest summer in the Ice Moon Empire, half of the mountain would be covered in white snow. However, in this extremely cold weather, the entire mountain peak was covered in white snow. The thick accumulated snow had collapsed due to the huge sound wave that had suddenly appeared. Snowflakes were originally unable to harm people. However, an avalanche formed by accumulated snow was one of the few disasters that nature found most difficult to resist. Although it was not as powerful as a volcanic eruption, the speed of an avalanche and the area it covered was something that a volcanic eruption could not compare with. Nian Bing pulled Lin Luan with one hand and Kitty with the other. They floated in the air under the breeze. Kitty said with some confusion, "Brother Nian Bing, you did it on purpose, didn't you? You lured them to agree loudly just now because of this avalanche, right?" Looking at the vast amount of snow surging down, mixed with some hard shards of ice, it roared and charged. In just an instant, it had already reached the foot of the mountain, covering the innermost glacier. After a few breaths, it was like a huge ice monster, swallowing the people of the Blood Lion sect under the last glacier. Nian Bing smiled slightly and said, "Their voices may not be able to cause such a huge avalanche. However, every word I said just now contained a spiritual shock. With the energy of these spiritual shocks, the snow on the mountain has already loosened. You can understand this avalanche as me doing it on purpose. Only in an extremely harsh environment can they be nurtured to become stronger. In the face of this natural disaster, if they want to survive safely, they must cooperate with each other. Only by cooperating and helping each other can they succeed. Chapter 213. Before Nian Bing could finish her sentence, the disciples of the Blood Lion sect below had already made their decision. Under Yin Wan's order, the disciples were shocked but did not panic. There was a total of 101 of them, and they quickly arranged themselves in a vertical line. Yin Wan was at the front, and he raised the long saber in his hand high. Surging fire fighting energy gathered on the saber. Although the fire element was inferior to the ice element in this world of ice and snow, he was a warrior after all. The environment had a much smaller effect on his fighting energy compared to magic. The scorching airflow caused the air to distort. Yin Wan stood with his feet spread out and stared at the roaring snow in front of him. Nian Bing, who was floating in the air, could not help but secretly applaud. Although the avalanche was terrifying, it was an indiscriminate large-scale impact. Under Yin Wan's command, all the disciples lined up in a straight line. In other words, only the person at the front would face the surging snow. Although the people at the back would be affected by the aftermath of the avalanche, they were much easier to deal with. With Yin Wan taking the lead and standing at the front, the Ice Moon Hall had no choice but to be united. As the hall leader, he had done what a hall leader was supposed to do. The fiery light suddenly exploded out with a roar. The full strength of the martial saint realm was displayed. Within the loud rumbling avalanche, it immediately brought about a sharp whistle. The red light was naturally nothing compared to the snow fog that was surging down. The fire-type Do-Chi that was over 100 feet long formed a straight line in the air. When the fire-type energy at the very front came into contact with the front of the avalanche, it immediately exploded. The huge flames swept in all directions in the air. The ice and snow that was pouncing toward Silver Dang's location was immediately blocked for a moment. The accumulated snow on both sides had already collapsed with a loud bang. Without any hesitation, Yin Wan leaped up. The figure behind him suddenly floated forward. Replacing his previous position, the long saber in his hand slashed out without hesitation. A ball of green light blasted out with a clear whistle. At this moment, the fighting energy that Yin Wan had unleashed with all his strength was drowned by the avalanche. The accumulated snow behind him had already rushed up. The green light also exploded when the avalanche rushed forward, but this time, it was the wind attribute Do-Chi that dealt with the avalanche. The wind attribute Do-Chi exploded in a spiral shape, and the huge amount of Do-Chi formed a rapidly rotating mini-tornado in front of the avalanche. Although this tornado did not look as magnificent as the magic tornado, and the area it covered was not as wide. However, the degree of condensation of this cyan tornado was not something that ordinary wind spells could compare to. For a moment, the falling snow was once again obstructed. Any snow that came into contact with the wind Do-Chi would immediately be swept aside, adding some momentum to the falling snow on both sides. At this moment, Swordsman, who was using his wind battle chi, had already leapt backwards. The last swordsman appeared at the forefront like a phantom. He was the only one who didn't use a weapon among the 101 players. He clenched his fists and got into a simple horse stance. With a low roar, he punched out with both fists. Yin Chi's fire-fighting energy could use the remove word to remove a large amount of impact from the snow bones. Although the strength of Do-Chi was stronger than magic, it could not last as long as magic. At this moment, the cyan tornado had gradually weakened, and the accumulated snow on both sides gradually gathered in the middle. Two balls of yellow light greeted the fists. It was an attack without any fancy moves. The earth attribute Do-Chi's defense was stronger than the other attribute Do-Chi. Moreover, this swordsman, who was about 60 years old, was even more superior to Yin Wan's Do-Chi. The purity of the Do-Chi was actually even above that of the Ice Moon Hall's Hall Master Yin Ho. When the yellow Do-Chi surged out, it already brought about many explosive sounds in the air. With each inch it advanced, the two clusters of yellow light would shrink a little. When the fire avalanche rushed forward, The two balls of yellow light had already shrunk from the size of a human head to the size of a fist. The Earth Attribute Swordsman let out another roar and clapped his hands in front of him. The two balls of yellow light suddenly merged together. Immediately after, a rumbling sound that was not any louder than the avalanches suddenly rang out. Snow flew all over the sky, and a huge explosive force spread out from the epicenter of the explosion to a radius of 30 meters. The most amazing thing was that the swordsman had excellent control over his do-chi. He actually caused the explosion to spread in the opposite direction of the avalanche. This gave the people behind him more time to react. The three swordsmen took turns attacking. Their speed could be measured by the time it took the avalanche to descend. From the moment Yin Mang first started to attack, the avalanche had already begun to charge downwards with a ferocious momentum. By the time the three martial saints had completed their first round of attacks, the avalanche on both sides had just swept past them. It was a distance of 150 feet, but the three martial saints had to each launch an all-out attack before they could barely stop the avalanche head-on. As the snow mist surged past, the warriors at the back moved at the same time. Fighting chi seeped out of their bodies and spread to the surroundings, protecting their bodies from the side. The few martial fighters at the front who were more powerful struck forward several times in succession before the three martial saints landed on the ground. They faced the avalanche head-on, causing Yin Mang to fall to the ground and continue to launch the second round of attack. The avalanche's momentum was too strong. From Yin Wan's position, he could only see the billowing snow mist, but he couldn't determine how long the avalanche would last. Halogen stood beside Nian Bing and said with some surprise, "Nian Bing, their method is very effective. Even I can't withstand such a strong avalanche for a long time. I will definitely be buried under the avalanche and will have to rely on my own ability to rush out of the snow. However, their strategy is very good. They can attack without any gap. Although the avalanche is strong, they can definitely handle it as long as they can hold on for a period of time. However, it does require a lot of do-chi to deal with this avalanche. I think they can only have 5 people attacking at the same time." Nian Bing nodded and said, "The strategy they are using is called the wolf pack strategy. In the wilderness, if a wolf pack wants to survive in a cold environment, they must immediately determine the direction when the cold wind appears. The alpha wolf will be at the front and the rest will be at the back. When the alpha wolf can't withstand the cold wind anymore, he will run to the back to rest. The second wolf will continue to withstand the cold wind, and so on and so forth until the avalanche is over. Hall Master Yin and the others are using this strategy. Of course, it is much more difficult for them to use it. After all, they are facing an avalanche." Halogen was referring to 5 people attacking at the same time. Nian Bing understood that when they were in a vertical formation, only the first person could attack at the front. The others at the back could attack from the left and right shoulders and waist of the person in front, instantly achieving the effect of 5 people attacking at the same time. While they were talking, the 3 swordsmen at the front had already completed 3 rounds of attack. The avalanche had also closed in from 15 feet away to 10 feet away. The 3 swordsmen had used up a lot of their do-chi to attack 3 times in a row. When they separated for the last time, Yin Zue had already given the order. The 3 pugilists at the back attacked at the same time. When the do-chi was released, the 3 of them jumped up at the same time. Just like Yin Lu and the other 2 martial sages, they tapped on their own people's shoulders and retreated to the back of the group. As for the martial fighters at the back, they were in groups of 3. They pushed out their palms and immediately flew into the air. They blocked and retreated at the same time, forming a beautiful arc in the air. None of them stopped or hesitated. Their coordination was exquisite. They blocked and retreated at the same time. For a moment, the avalanche couldn't increase its speed and could only approach them bit by bit. When the attack reached the great swordsman, it had already changed to 5 people in a group. The same do-chi attack could achieve a similar effect. At a time like this, if there was a problem with one group of people, it would immediately cause a commotion. However, these 100 experts of the Ice Moon Hall did not panic at all. They blocked wave after wave of avalanches and gradually retreated. Although the power of the avalanche was enormous, it came and went quickly. The violent impact lasted for the time it took to eat a meal. It had already left where Zue and the others were and continued to charge downwards. At the bottom of the glacier, a strange scene appeared. The place where the 100 people were in the isosceles triangle formed a deep gully. Both sides of the gully were covered in snow up to 3 feet high. However, they were still in a vertical line and stayed in the gully. Everyone, including the 3 swordsmen, was panting. After 3 cycles of resistance, everyone had used up a lot of do chi. Nian Bing led Halogen and Kitty and landed on the snow beside the gully. Under the effect of the flying wind spell, they didn't leave a trace on the snow. Nian Bing's voice entered the ears of every Ice Moon Hall member. How do you feel? This is the power of nature. However, the impact of the avalanche is based on the direction of the snowy mountain. How powerful do you think the impact this time is? I can tell you that, if we measure it with magic, the impact of this avalanche is equivalent to the energy of the God's Descent spell. However, the impact is only at the level of a forbidden spell. Because the avalanche's coverage is too large, and it's not controlled by humans, the energy is dispersed. If you meet a God's Descent spellmaster, then the snow waterfall created by magic is not something you can resist with this method. I let you experience the avalanche's baptism for 2 reasons. First, I want to see how well you can cooperate with each other. Second, I want to tell you that in the mission 2 months later, we will face 10 enemies who are at or above the level of the Snow Waterfall Spellmaster. In 2 months, I hope you can change a lot. 2 months is not a long time. Whether or not you can destroy the enemy and keep your own life will depend on your own abilities. Now you can rest here for 2 hours. After 2 hours, you have to find the ice cave that you opened. I said that will be the place where you will rest for the next 2 months. I will give you a total of 6 hours. After 6 hours, I will tell you the training plan for the next 2 months. This plan is very difficult, so I hope you can be mentally prepared. Even if the warriors of the Ice Moon Hall were mentally prepared, they could not imagine what kind of training Nian Bing was going to give them. After 6 hours, when Nian Bing told them her plan, all 101 people fell into a daze. They stared blankly at the leader of the Blood Lion cult in front of them. No one dared to believe that this was real. Leader, you mean to say that we have to raise this snowy mountain to the ground in 2 months? The Silver Snake Department did not dare to believe their ears. The tallest snowy mountain in this mountain range was at least 3,000 feet above sea level. Not to mention 2 months, even if they had 2 years, they would not be able to raise it to the ground. This was simply an impossible task. Nian Bing looked at the towering snowy mountain a few thousand feet away and said calmly, "That's right. In 2 months there will be a total of 101 people. You will be divided into 3 groups led by 3 swordsmen, including the Silver Hall Master. Your strength will be evenly distributed. Each group will spend 8 hours a day. You can use any method you can to attack the snowy mountain. In 2 months, the 500 Blood Guards will come here. They will do the same thing as you. 600 of them will attack the snowy mountain together. Other than attacking the snowy mountain for 8 hours a day, you will stay in the ice cave to cultivate and recover your do chi. I will take care of your food and water. You don't need to worry." The Silver Snake said with difficulty, "But, leader, this is really too difficult. Not to mention us, even 100 swordsmen will not be able to complete this task." A cold light flashed in Nian Bing's eyes. He said, "How do you know it's impossible if you haven't tried? I have checked. Half of this snowy mountain is covered in ice and snow, while the other half is made of rock. I hope you can understand one thing. As long as you are willing to work hard, there is nothing you can't do. Just watch." As he spoke, he leaped into the air. Green spots of light coalesced beneath him. Like a cloud, they carried Nian Bing's body and flew into the air. Everyone's gazes followed Nian Bing into the air. These elites from the Blood Lion sect's Ice Moon Hall quickly witnessed the strength of their sect leader. When Nian Bing floated up to 9,000 feet in the air, he stopped. A golden light flashed between his eyebrows. Countless black dots of light condensed into black light ribbons that gathered around his body. Slowly, Nian Bing raised his right hand. A huge black shadow that was 6 feet tall gradually appeared behind him. Although he was far from the ground, he deliberately controlled the surrounding ice mist to disperse so that his subordinates could clearly see what he was doing. The black shadow that was 6 feet tall gradually became clearer. Under the black robe, it emitted a gloomy aura. Even the sun in the sky was overshadowed by it. Nian Bing's lower abdomen also turned golden under the influence of the golden light between his eyebrows. The surrounding black energy condensed even faster as he raised his right hand. The huge black shadow behind him also raised its right hand. Surging dark elements, filled with a corrosive and gloomy aura, condensed in the black shadow's hand. A huge scythe that was 10 feet long and 7 feet long gradually took shape. There were 7 black gems on the scythe's blade. Although they were the same color as the blade, they emitted a terrifying aura. Nian Bing's azure eyes turned a deep black at this moment. A faint rainbow light appeared, completely enveloping him and the black shadow behind him. A low voice spread through the entire mountain range. Death, God, scythe, blade of death, God, scythe, blade. Nian Bing's right hand swung out. The huge black shadow behind him also swung out its right hand and the huge scythe in its right hand. The people below saw a black screen of light slash out horizontally. When they opened their mouths in shock, the black screen of light had already entered the snowy mountain from 9,000 feet up. It was as if nothing had happened at all. The black shadow behind Nian Bing gradually faded. However, a slanted black mark appeared on the pure white snowy mountain. Suddenly, the black mark seemed to light up. Then, the mountain peak above the mark actually moved. It moved slightly, and the speed at which it moved became faster and faster. The mountain peak that was hundreds of feet tall actually moved slowly along with the slanted mark. The moment the mountain peak completely separated from the mountain, all the disciples of the Ice Moon Hall would never forget the scene in front of them. The mountain peak slid to the side along the mountain's body. A huge roar that was at least 10 times louder than the previous avalanche came as the mountain peak fell into the valley. The entire mountain range trembled violently because of Nian Bing's tyrannical attack. For a moment, countless snowy peaks experienced avalanches. The entire mountain range whimpered because of Nian Bing's peerless attack. The trembling of the earth lasted for a full 15 minutes. When everything calmed down, the mountain peak that was only 9,000 feet tall had disappeared. The mountain peak that was originally thousands of feet tall was now only 900 feet tall. The mountain peak had disappeared. Nothing could be more real than this. Nian Bing's body slowly descended from the sky. His expression did not change at all. Among the people present, only Halogen understood. The previous attack from Nian Bing clearly had the strength of the 13th level. It was no longer an 11th level dark forbidden spell. Under the amplification of the sky eye field and the dark elemental Xiantian Qi brought about by the full operation of the West Meridian Acupoint, the 13th level attack had flattened the mountain peak. Halogen asked himself, even if it was him, using the power of the dwarf god axe to launch the strongest attack, the effect could not be more than this. However, Nian Bing looked so relaxed, as if all this was nothing at all. If the warriors of the Ice Moon Hall were filled with surprise and confusion when Nian Bing announced the training method, then at this moment, their feelings had become deep shock. Everything that Nian Bing had done, in their hearts, could not be described with words. The mission that Silver Dang had said was impossible to complete had only been completed in an instant. 1/10 of it had been completed by Nian Bing. Perhaps the 100 zhang range of the mountain peak was not as large as below, But now, no one doubted that Nian Bing could flatten this snowy mountain with his own strength. 101-1. No one said any more words of objection. In their eyes, this young leader of the Blood Lion sect had already become a godlike existence. If there were still disciples of the Ice Moon Hall who were not convinced by Nian Bing before seeing the kiss of the death god's sickle, they no longer had any doubts. Respecting the strong was a principle that would never change. Nian Bing did not waste his breath. He used his own actions to tell his subordinates what a true strong was. Landing on the ground, Nian Bing was still the Nian Bing who was originally wearing coarse clothes. However, in the eyes of his subordinates, the Nian Bing at this moment had become abnormally tall, as high as the snowy mountain that could not be reached. Without any further explanation, Nian Bing directly gave the order. Yin Tu, the leader of the Ice Moon Hall, lead your 33 subordinates and start the mountain exterminating training. You will change after 8 hours. The others will rest in the ice cave. Yes, leader. The 101 voices seemed to come from the same person, but the orderly voices were full of respect without exception. Yin Tu took a deep look at Nian Bing, and led his 32 subordinates to the mountaintop at the fastest speed. The other 60 or so people silently walked to the ice cave at the side and started to cultivate in their respective ice cave. Halogen gave Nian Bing a thumbs up and showed an approving smile. Nian Bing smiled back and said, I think these 2 months must be very beneficial for them. Now I should also prepare some things for my subordinate. Kitty, you and Brother Halogen stay here. You can cultivate spiritual magic by yourself. Release your little pets and let them destroy the mountain with the people of the Ice Moon Hall. Kitty asked curiously, Brother Nian Bing, what are you going to do? Aren't you going to accompany Kitty? Nian Bing smiled and said, I still have some matters to attend to. I'll be back in 2 days. During these 2 days, my subordinates won't have any food to eat, and they'll have to expend so much energy. This will be a huge test for them. However, as long as they can endure for 2 days, their strength will definitely increase. Training cannot only be done from the outside. It must be done from the inside. Kitty, the rations that Big Brother Rune brought are enough for you to eat for 2 days. Be good and listen to me. Big Brother Nian Bing will be back soon. When he comes back, he will definitely bring back some delicious food for you. Kitty was a little reluctant, but she also knew that Nian Bing had something important to do. She could only nod helplessly and say, Brother Nian Bing, you must go and come back early. Nian Bing smiled and nodded at Kitty, then floated up. If the subordinates of the Ice Moon Hall saw what their leader was doing now, they would probably be even more surprised. Gray spots of light condensed under Nian Bing's body. Oscar let out a cheerful dragon roar and spread his broad wings. Wrapped in a golden-gray light, he took Nian Bing and disappeared from Kitty and Halogen's sight in the blink of an eye. Dragon, it's a dragon. When did Brother Nian Bing become a dragon summoner? But his summoning method is so strange. Kitty looked at the direction where Nian Bing disappeared in confusion. Halogen smiled and said, Your brother Nian Bing always does strange things. Kitty, you should also start cultivating. Let Brother Halogen take a look at your summoned beast. Halogen liked this little sister from the bottom of his heart. Perhaps it was because the two of them shared the same fate and had both lost their parent. From the first time he saw Kitty, Halogen had a desire to protect her from the bottom of his heart. Kitty said excitedly, No problem. Brother Halogen, look, Kitty's little pets have already evolved to become very powerful. I summon you all in the name of Hope Cloud. Come out, Tian Tian, Dan Dan, Na Na, Chong Chong, Guan. If Nian Bing was here, she would definitely be surprised. Kitty was actually using a group summoning technique. Compared to the previous single summoning technique, this was at least several times more difficult. A faint silver light surrounded Kitty's body. She pointed her hands in front of her and a silver star of light with a diameter of 3 zhang appeared out of thin air. Immediately after, black, white, red, black, and pink, 4 figures of 4 colors floated out of the silver light at the same time. As they extended outwards, the 5 figures gradually grew larger. When they landed on the ground, they had already revealed their original forms. Halogen was still puzzled at first. What was Tian Tian and Dan Dan? Could they be eaten? But when he saw Kitty's summoned beasts, he was shocked. He couldn't help but be shocked. The 5 figures were of different sizes, but without exception, they all exuded a tyrannical aura. Halogen recognized one of them. That fat, huge mountain-like body, wasn't it Nian Bing's dark magic mouse? How did it become Kitty's pet? Kitty said proudly, "Brother Halogen, let me introduce it to you." As she spoke, she pointed to the mountain-like big mouse and said, "This is Tian Tian, a dark magic mouse. It's best at digging holes and defense. It's a hybrid dark and earth magic beast. Now it has evolved to the 5th stage. It can manipulate some dark and earth magic, and its own defensive ability is very strong. It's like a moving fortress. It's one of the best defensive pets." That's right. Nian Bing also has a dark magic mouse. His dark magic mouse is Tian Tian's mother. Hearing Kitty's words, Halogen understood and praised. "No, this dark magic mouse is really good at digging holes. When I helped Nian Bing save his parents, it was thanks to this big mouse." Kitty's hand moved from the black dark demon rat Tian Tian to the white figure at the side. She smiled and said, "This is Whitey, the big milk cow Whitey. It's an explosive Taurus with a belly full of explosive golden milk. Whitey's ability is milk spray. It has also evolved to the 5th stage. Now, not only can Whitey spray golden milk with strong attack power, but its milk also has an auxiliary effect. As long as other pets drink its milk, they can instantly enter a berserk state and their strength will increase by 1.5 times. Whitey is relatively good at attacking and assisting. It belongs to the half-attack and half-support type pet. The current cow Whitey was completely different from the one Nian Bing saw before. Its fur was mainly white and only its back was black. Before reaching the 2nd stage, its size was not much different from a normal cow, but now it had grown into a giant cow with a body length of 3 feet and a height of 2 feet. Its black and white fur was extremely glossy. The cow horns that should not have appeared on the cow's head appeared on its head. It was a pair of white horns. Under its belly, 8 large golden breasts drooped slightly, exuding a strange fragrance. A pair of huge cow eyes stared at the red figure beside it. Kitty followed the cow Whitey's gaze and fell on the red figure. Among the 5 pets, this golden red figure was the most beautiful. Its body was about 3 feet long, and its golden red fur was emitting a dazzling brilliance. It was much more beautiful than before, especially that huge tail, which looked extremely gorgeous. Under its tail, there was a golden red thorn about 3 feet long. It laid lazily on the ground, and the only thing that did not change was the obscene look in its eyes. It was staring at the large golden breasts under the cow's belly, as if it was ready to attack at any time. Whitey seemed to be very helpless against him. Although it was vigilant, it did not avoid him. Kitty laughed and said, "That Na-Na is the dog-headed strategist of my little pet. No, it should be the fox-headed strategist. Don't be fooled by its beautiful appearance, it is actually full of bad ideas. It is also the only fully support-type pet among my little pet. It can also be called a harass-type pet. Although it does not have much attack power, it is very useful." After evolving to the 5th stage, Na-Na now has 5 types of skills, and is also one of the pets with the most skills. It can use its skills to cause a lot of trouble for the enemy. Its original name should be the Golden Lust Fox. It was originally a natural enemy of Whitey, and Whitey's golden breasts were very beneficial to it. It was the greatest tonic, so Whitey hated it the most. However, it would always pester Whitey, and drink Whitey's milk whenever it had the chance. As for its skills, you will definitely see them in the future. Although it is not the most powerful one, it is definitely the most important one. Its obscenity and lasciviousness is the nightmare of all its enemies, and even its own people. Na-Na obviously heard Kitty's words. Its obscene eyes moved, and its mouth cracked open, as if it was laughing lasciviously. Seeing its eyes, even Halogen could not help but be a little surprised. There were also obscene humans, but compared to this fox's obscene eyes, there was a big difference. Nana's gaze fell on Kitty's delicate body that had already developed very well. Kitty quietly blushed and said angrily, "What are you looking at? Be careful that I don't castrate you. I'll make you a eunuch fox." Upon hearing this, Nana hurriedly shrank its head and covered its head with its big golden red tail. It did not even dare to look at the cow Whitey. Kitty said, "The fourth one is my cockroach Chong Chong. Cockroach belongs to a more special pet. It is an illusion golem. Its best ability is illusion, also called body illusion. Chong Chong's attack ability is also reflected in the illusion. After reaching the 5th stage, it can rely on its special ability to become any of my pets, and it has half of its attack ability. Although Chong Chong's attack is not very strong, its defense and illusion are the best ability to protect me. Its escape speed is very fast. If it cooperates with Tian Tian, it can quickly escape underground with me. Unfortunately, they can't escape the tracking of spiritual power. Otherwise, Dad and Mom wouldn't." At the mention of parents, Kitty's eyes suddenly turned red, and her expression could not help but dim a lot. Chapter 214. Halogen had been in the human world for a long time. When he saw Kitty's expression, he naturally knew that she was upset. He quickly pointed to the pink body and said, "What about this one? Is this a pig? This is the first time I've seen such a big pig. Is it very powerful? This guy is really fat. I don't know how many pounds it is." He said it very naturally. Indeed, it was the first time he had seen such a big pig, and it was a pink pig. Guan Guan's body was so big that it was even bigger than the big mouse Tian Tian. Its whole body was like a huge ball, and it was no longer as cute as before. Although it was just standing there with its fat jiggling, it still exuded the aura of a king, and its face was full of pride. Hearing Halogen's words, without waiting for Kitty to speak, Guan snorted and said in a low muffled voice, "What's wrong with being fat? Haven't you heard that a ball is also a body shape?" Halogen was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. He had seen many monsters, but even the ones that Nian Bing had subdued were considered powerful in the continent of gods. None of them could speak human language. Looking at Halogen's shocked expression, Kitty's sadness disappeared a little. She smiled and said, "Guan is very smart. It has a tail that looks like a chrysanthemum, so it's called the pink chrysanthemum pig. Although this name sounds ordinary, it's one of the kings of the pets. Its strength is not inferior to that of a giant dragon. It's also the strongest pet of the white people. If Guan could evolve to the 6th grade like it did when we were attacked, maybe my parents and I could have escaped without them releasing their sacred beasts. Guan Guan's defense is very strong, and its attack power is even stronger. It only has one skill, but it's this one skill that makes its attack power comparable to that of the Dragon Clan. Its skill, Beast Blood Boil, has reached a very strong level after reaching the 6th tier. Although it's not as strong as Brother Nianbing's ability to split the mountain, it's still capable of shaking the earth and mountains. Chrysanthemum pig? This was truly a strange race. Halogen sized up Guan. Guan's eyes, which were much bigger than before, were also staring back at him. Hot air was coming out of his huge nostrils. Kitty giggled and said, "All right, little pets. Let's go." At her command, the other 4 pets except for Nana the fox were about to move, but Halogen stopped them. "Wait a minute, Kitty." Although Halogen did not know how strong all 5 pets were, he had dealt with dark demon rats before. Tiantian's mother's tyrannical ability to penetrate the ground had left a deep impression on him. "Kitty, I think it's better if your pets don't participate in the mountain-destroying operation. I think Nian Bing definitely doesn't know that your pets in this world are already so strong. If they participate in the mountain-destroying operation, I'm afraid that Nian Bing's subordinates in that world will have less experience. You can take them back, but this fox always looks lazy. I think it's good to let it practice. When Nana, who was originally lying on the ground, heard Halogen's words, it suddenly stood up from the ground. The obscene look in its eyes turned into anger. It squeaked a few times and bared its teeth, revealing an unkind aura. Kitty said, "That's right. Nana doesn't have any attacking ability and is very lazy. Although it has evolved very quickly recently, its body really needs to be trained. Nana, then you go." The cow at the side let out a moo sound, taking pleasure in Nana's misfortune. It excitedly turned around on the ground and squeaked a few more times, as if it was begging for mercy. Kitty snorted and said, "Faint, what's there to be happy about? Go, you and Nana go together. Your attack power is not very strong. You can go and train with Nana." As she spoke, a silver light flashed in her hand, and she took back Chrysanthemum Pig Guan, Phantom Golem Chong Chong, and Dark Demon Rat Tion Tion. The cow's extreme joy turned into sorrow. It was stunned for a moment. Nana's movements were extremely fast. It turned into a golden-red figure and instantly came under Faint. It sucked a few mouthfuls of the golden milk. Before Faint could react, it made a lewd and lascivious cry and quickly ran towards the snow mountain. Halogen laughed and said, "Your pets in this world are really intelligent. Kitty, wait for me here. I'll also go and take a look, so that your Nian Bing's subordinates in that world won't hurt your pets because of ignorance." The black figure bounced up. Kitty was surprised to see that Halogen had already caught up with the fox in a flash. Faint roared angrily and followed him towards the mountain. Riding on Oscar's back, although the little Dragon King was flying at an extremely fast speed, Nian Bing felt that it was very stable. Even the wind brought about by the extreme speed was blocked by the gray airflow emitted by Oscar. It did not affect his body in the slightest. One person and one dragon were telepathically connected. Without Nian Bing's intentional command, Oscar knew where to fly to. With his speed, it would take at most 2 days to cross the distance of 1,000 miles and reach Nian Bing's destination. After leaving the snow mountain, Nian Bing began her own practice on Oscar's back. She would not let go of any opportunity to practice as she was about to face a great change. In a dark room, Evil Moon opened the window. He did not turn on the light. He placed his hands on both sides of the windowsill and looked up at the silent night sky. The night was particularly clear today, without any trace of dark clouds. The crescent moon revealed half of its face. It was particularly beautiful against the surrounding starlight. The soft white light brought some breath of life to the earth. "It seems that tomorrow should be a sunny day," Evil Moon murmured to himself. "Evil Lord, what are you thinking about?" A soft voice sounded behind Evil Moon. A pair of pale, bloodless arms wrapped around Evil Moon's shoulders. A seductive body was attached to his back. Evil Moon patted the small hands around him and said, "What else can I be thinking about? After 1,000 years of hard work, my dream is about to come true. How can I not think about it?" Sina, the Queen of Vampire, clung to Evil Moon's cold body and whispered, Are we really going to do that this time?" Evil Moon grabbed Sina's hand and turned around abruptly. "Why? Are you reluctant?" "I only know that I want her to be a sacrifice. As for what will happen in the end, I don't know. She is also my daughter. Do you think I don't care? However, 1,000 years have passed. With a certain amount of luck, we have today's situation. I have been thinking about this for a long time. I can have another daughter. However, I'm afraid this is the only chance I have to fulfill my wish." Sina was silent for a while. She lowered her head and did not look at Evil Moon's flashing green eyes. After a long time, she reluctantly said, I'm not just doing this for you. I'm also doing this for us. The 7 Dragon Kings are not fools. They have been looking for us. If they really come, I'm afraid we can't resist them. You are the most outstanding genius in our dark world for 1,000 years. It was not easy for us to get Miorda's bottle of sealing. We can't make any mistakes. Evil Moon let go of Sina's hand and said, I understand what you said. However, no matter what we will face this time, no one can stop me from doing this. Sina, your vision is not far enough. I'm afraid that what we are going to face this time is not as simple as the 7 Dragon Kings. It seems that we have to take out all the arrangements we have made over the years. We don't ask for credit. As long as we delay enough time, when I become the master of the lost continent, nothing will change. After years of hard work, I can't let go of this opportunity, no matter how much I have to pay. I must succeed. Sina trembled and said, You want to? Evil Moon nodded and said, I can't care so much now. I have to do this. As long as we can succeed, even if we become the public enemy of the Yangon continent, so what? I have sent people to prepare. Now no one can stop my determination. Sina, you are my wife. I am your wife. I hope you can help me with all your strength. Sina sighed softly and said, No matter what you decide, I will help you with all my strength. Ever since the day I followed you, everything about me has already been yours. The green light in Evil Moon's eyes became gentler. He held Sina in his arms and said, Well, don't be sad. You may not be in danger. Reporting. A low voice came from outside the room. Sina left Evil Moon's arms and disappeared into the darkness in silence. Evil Moon said indifferently, Come in. A strong black figure pushed the door and entered. He half knelt on the ground and said respectfully, Lord Evil Moon. Evil Moon nodded and said, Ping Chao, how are the preparations for what I asked you to do? Ping Chao looked up at Evil Moon and said, Everything is ready. You can start at any time. Evil Moon's eyes shone brightly. Well, you did a good job this time. I will definitely reward you in the future. Go and take Yu to the Netherworld cave first. It's time to start the arrangement. Ping Chao nodded respectfully and turned away. The green light in Evil Moon's eyes turned into an evil red, and the cold light flickered continuously. Sina, we are going to start. Ping Chao left Evil Moon's room. His body trembled. He raised his head, and there was a hint of struggle on his pale and handsome face. Suddenly, he seemed to have decided something. He quickened his pace and walked outside. As a vampire count, he soon arrived at his destination. In the distance, he had already seen the slender figure. Yu squatted on the ground, playing with the 2 crickets in the round box with a small branch. Come on, General, you are so stupid. Be careful, it will bite your leg. Yu. Ping Chao stood behind Yu, and there was a hint of tenderness in his eyes. However, his fists were clenched tightly. Yu raised her head and happened to see the gentle light in Ping Chao's eyes. She smiled and said, Brother Ping Chao, you are just in time. Look, my general is so powerful. You are right today. Good, you deserve a reward. Brother Ping Chao, what do you want me to reward you with? Ping Chao sighed, walked to Yu and squatted down. He whispered, Then reward me by listening to me. Yu was stunned and said, Brother Ping Chao, you are usually very quiet. What's wrong with you today? Just say what you want to say. Since she was born, Ping Chao had been like this. From childhood to adulthood, everything about her was under Ping Chao's care. For her, Ping Chao was like a brother and a father. He was much closer to her than her own parent. Although he didn't talk much, his concern for her was very real. Therefore, if Yu had to say who was the most important person to her, it would definitely be Ping Chao. Ping Chao took a deep breath and calmed his agitated mind. He whispered, Yu, I will take you away. Let's go far away, to a place where no one can find us, okay? Yu blinked her big eyes and looked at Ping Chao. She laughed and said with some ridicule, Brother Ping Chao, you don't want me to elope with you, right? Aren't you afraid that my father will kill you? Usually, when Yu teased Ping Chao, he would blush easily. However, there was no change in his expression today. He was still so pale. Yu, I am not joking with you. Come with me. Yu frowned and said, Why? Ping Chao took a deep breath and said, Yu, you have called me brother for so many years. Do you believe me? Yu nodded and said, Of course I believe you. Brother Ping Chao, what is wrong with you today? You are so strange. I have never seen you like this before. Ping Chao sighed and said, If you believe me, then come with me. I will not harm you. Don't ask any more, okay? There are some things I don't want you to know. Yu stood up and said with a pout, No, if you don't make it clear, how can I go with you? It's not like you don't know my father's temper. If I secretly run away with you, wouldn't he kill you? Ping Chao said anxiously, I want to take you away because I am afraid of your father. When he said that, he realized that he had leaked it. Yu's expression changed slightly. She grabbed Ping Chao's sleeve and said, Brother Ping Chao, quickly tell me, what is going on? What happened to my father? What is he going to do? Ping Chao sighed secretly. He knew that he could not hide it. He understood Yu's temper too well. If he did not make things clear, she would not go with him. He stood beside her and said, Yu, Lord Evil Lord should have told you about Miorda's sealing bottle summoning. Do you know? This summoning requires the Dark Saintess as a sacrifice. Under special conditions, the seal can be opened. Yu was a very smart girl. Although Ping Chao said it vaguely, she immediately understood. Her expression changed slightly and said, Brother Ping Chao, are you saying that I am the Dark Saintess? No, impossible. How could my father use me as a sacrifice? You must be lying to me, right? She shook Ping Chao's hand, but her face had become somewhat pale. Ping Chao let out a long sigh and said, Yu, I'm a vampire. Since the day I awakened my vampire body, I've been following your mother, Sina. With Sina's help, I've been able to continuously replenish my strength and reach my current level. Lord Evil Lord is Sina's husband and the master of our dark world. We belong to the dark world. In this dark world, I am somewhat tired. You should understand that our dark world is not as simple as freedom. In order to achieve our goals, we will use any means necessary. In order to open Miorda's sealing bottle, Lord Evil Lord has been preparing for hundreds of years. At this time, who can stop his will? Yu, I know you will be very sad after hearing this, but I have to tell you. When Lord Evil Lord decided to give birth to you as his daughter, he had a purpose. You grew up under Lord Evil Lord's nurturing. Under his deliberate nurturing, you became the Dark Saintess of our dark world. Lord Evil Lord is doing this for the upcoming moment. Yu, I can't bear to see you like this, I can't bear to see you like this, come with me. As long as I still have a breath in me, I will always protect you. Yu, I just want to be by your side forever. I want to be your brother Ping Chao forever. I don't want you to suffer any harm. If I can use my life to exchange for yours, I am willing to do so. You are 17 years old this year. In these 17 years, I have not left your side for a day. In these 17 years, I have watched you grow up to be a slender and elegant young lady. Although I am also a member of the dark world. But no matter what, I don't want to see you get hurt. Believe me, I am not lying to you. I am willing to swear on my life and soul. Yu was completely stunned. She looked at Ping Chao's sincere eyes. She knew in her heart that everything Ping Chao said was the truth. In her view, Ping Chao was not like someone from the dark world. Since she was young, Ping Chao had never told her a lie. Why did father want to make me a sacrifice? Even when he gave birth to me, did he have a purpose? Although she knew that this was the truth, she could not accept it in her heart. Yu's originally rosy face became even paler. Her black eyes gradually lit up with two balls of green light. Traces of evil aura were emitted from her body. Her heart was very, very cold. Yu, what's wrong? Don't scare me, okay? Ping Chao looked at Yu worriedly. In his eyes, Yu had always been a happy little girl. This was the first time Ping Chao saw her like this. Yu shook her head. With a sad smile, she said, Brother Ping Chao, do you think I can go? Don't you know father's style? Since he has decided to do something, He will consider everything that may happen. I am his daughter. His blood flows in my body. No matter where I run, he can find my aura. I can't go. Running away is useless. Ping Chao anxiously said, Then are you willing to be the sacrifice to open the seal? Yu, now we can only fight. Come with me. The farther we go, the better. Yu still shook her head. Thank you, brother Ping Chao. Do you know? In Yu's heart, you are always the most important. Today, you can say these words to Yu. Yu is really happy. Actually, I know that all of my father's subordinates, including you, have been cursed by him. If you escape with me, my father only needs to chant the curse and you will fall into a state of eternal damnation. You want to use your own life to exchange for mine. How can Yu do that? Brother Ping Chao, does Yu look good today? Ping Chao froze for a moment. The Yu in front of him was wearing a dark green dress. Although she wasn't very tall, her exquisite and tender body was so moving. Although her eyes were full of sadness, it couldn't hide her moving appearance. Inheriting the appearance of the vampire queen Sina, of course she was very beautiful. Her beauty was so moving. Ping Chao suddenly discovered that the 17-year-old Yu was no longer a little girl. She had grown up. Her eyes flashed with a dark green light, making the vampire Count Ping Chao's heart feel sad. He firmly nodded and said, Yes, you are very beautiful. Yu took Ping Chao's big hand and said, Thank you, brother Ping Chao. You don't have to say anything. Since father has decided to do that to me, I have no other choice. Brother Ping Chao, I know you like Yu. Yu also likes you. Although I usually bully you, but in Yu's heart, you are the most important. I can't go with you. I am willing to accept my fate. Ping Chao's whole body shook. He tightly held Yu's hand. His body trembled because of excitement. No, Yu, you must go with me. Even if I have to use force, I will take you with me. Yu let Ping Chao hold her hand and sadly said, It's useless. No matter what we do, it will be in vain. Why bother? Brother Ping Chao, no matter what happens, Yu wants you to live well. You are a good person. You should not belong to the darkness. Before the ritual to open the seal begins, I will let Father remove your curse and let you leave here. Ping Chao was about to say something when a low and cold voice suddenly sounded. Yes, no matter what you do, it will be in vain. Ping Chao. How dare you? It seems that my judgment was not wrong. A dark aura instantly filled the small courtyard. The light of the stars and the moon in the sky completely dimmed at this moment. An evil aura enveloped everything in the surroundings. The black figure slowly walked over. It was as if he had appeared out of thin air. There was no expression on that handsome and evil face, but those red evil eyes were filled with an evil aura. Lord Evil. Ping Chao was shocked and hurriedly let go of Yu's hand. The pressure accumulated over the years made him immediately bow down habitually. In the face of Evil Moon, he could not even think of resisting. Yu stepped forward and stood in front of Ping Chao. She coldly looked at her father without saying a word. No matter how cruel Evil Moon was, under the burning gaze of his daughter, the killing intent in his eyes disappeared. He sighed and said, You know. In fact, you will know this sooner or later. Ping Chao has taken care of you for many years. I expected that he would tell you this today. Yu calmly said, Father, I just want you to tell me in person. Did you and Mother give birth to me in order to open the seal of Miorda's bottle of sealing? Evil Moon was stunned, but he did not deny it. He nodded and said, Yes, what Ping Chao just told you is true. I decided to give birth to you as my daughter in order to open the seal of Miorda's bottle of sealing. Yu, maybe all this is too cruel for you. But no matter what you think, I have to do it. I've been waiting for this day for far too long. I've let you down. Although I have to sacrifice you to open the seal, I don't feel good about it. But I have no other choice. That's enough. Yu interrupted Evil Moon. I understand, Father. She called out the word, Father, very clearly, but it sounded so desolate in the night. A faint smile appeared on his face as he faintly said, "Since I was born, I was destined to have that day. How can I decide my own fate? My life was given by you, and it's nothing to give it back to you. Father, don't worry. I am willing to help you, no matter what you ask me to do. You will do as you ask. I am your daughter and your tool. As a tool, I have to do my duty well." Evil Moon was shocked. Even though he was the master of darkness, he was not emotionless. He looked at Yuyu's calm eyes and heard her call him father. For the first time, Evil Moon hesitated. He doubted whether his choice was right. However, this hesitation only lasted for a moment. "Yuyu, you are my only daughter, no matter now. In the future." The smile on Yuyu's face moved a little. "Is this not still important? It doesn't mean anything to me." "Father, you don't have to say more. I understand what you mean. I will do what you ask me to do. However, I hope you can promise me a condition, okay? A condition that is not too much." Evil Moon nodded. He looked at Ping Chao, who was kneeling on the ground, and said, "Do you want me to spare his life?" Yuyu said, "Yes, that's it. Father, if my guess is correct, with the Dark Saintess as a memorial ceremony, if I cooperate with you and do as you say, the ceremony can be completed more smoothly, right? If I resist, or if I have the intention to resist, you may succeed, but it won't be so smooth. My request is very simple. You can't kill Brother Ping Chao, and you have to lift the curse on him. Before the sacrificial ceremony begins, I hope that he can stay by my side. When the sacrificial ceremony begins, please let him go and never do anything to harm him. Let him live his own life." Evil Moon looked deeply at Yuyu and said indifferently, "You are indeed my daughter. Are you threatening me?" Yuyu didn't back down at all as she looked at her father. "You can say that. However, I believe you will agree. In the face of better interests, my father always knows how to choose." Evil Moon nodded and said, "Okay, I can promise you, but don't forget your promise." "No, Yuyu, you can't promise." Ping Chao stood up abruptly and stood in front of Yuyu. He said sadly, "Lord Evil, please let Yuyu go. She is your biological daughter." A cold light flashed in Evil Moon's eyes. "How can you interrupt our conversation? Get out of the way. Otherwise, I may change my mind." With a wave of his hand, an invisible dark aura enveloped Ping Chao's body and threw him aside. Yuyu didn't move, nor did she look at Ping Chao, who was thrown aside. "Father, since I have promised, I won't go back on my word. How about we swear on our souls together?" Evil Moon frowned and looked at Yuyu. "Don't you believe me?" Yuyu said with some disdain, "Should I believe you? You once taught me that we are people in the dark. The so-called promises of human beings are the most boring thing. Compared with promises, I believe in your oath more. Only by swearing on one's soul can we bind people in the dark. This is what people taught me. Have you forgotten it?" Evil Moon nodded and said, "Okay, I promise you. Then let's swear together." In the darkness not far behind Evil Moon, tears were flowing down from Sina's face. However, she didn't stop all this from happening, because she knew that it was not something she could stop. Everything in front of her was what she didn't want to see the most, but she could only watch it happen. However, when it was their turn, they deeply understood the gap between their strength. 2 full days had passed, but what they were able to accomplish was very little. Under the continuous efforts of the 3 groups of people, only 10 feet of the 900 feet tall snow mountain had been completely removed. Moreover, the lower the mountain was, the bigger it became. Based on the current situation, even if they worked together continuously, they would not be able to destroy the snow mountain in front of them in 10 years. Mao Mao and Maluan looked at the people who were busy at the top of the snowy mountain from afar. They were filled with admiration. 2 days had passed. Although Nian Bing wasn't around, these people didn't slack off at all. They worked hard every day and weren't stingy with the use of their battle chi. Although their fighting strength was constantly decreasing because they didn't eat, They could only use ice and snow to satisfy their hunger.